OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Yes, you're all very welcome along to Friday's edition of OTB AM. It's Aisling Eoin sitting in for Adrian Barry this morning. We have a brilliant show lined up to look ahead to a massive weekend of sport. There's lots happening. Of course, the All Blacks against Ireland in the third and final test tomorrow in Wellington. You have the LGFA semi-finals in Croke Park, the Open Championship, and the big one, the All-Ireland Hurling final, Limerick versus Kilkenny. Throw-in is at 3:30pm. And I'm going to be alongside Kilkenny's Tommy Walsh for that one. And if you do anything this weekend, make sure to tune in to listen to Tommy from Croke Park. He will make you feel like you're alongside with him. It's a special moment, definitely. So speaking of Limerick versus Kilkenny, Owen Sheahan is also alongside me this morning. How's it going, Owen?
Very well, Aisling. I'd completely forgotten about that moment, which is now the high point of All-Ireland Hurling final weekend. Tommy Walsh talking down the microphone in Croke Park at around 3 o'clock on the Sunday afternoon of All-Ireland Hurling final week. It's going to be special. The thing is, he's got to such a point now. I'm sure he's been planning this for months and months and months because where does he go but up from this point?
This is it, and if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, so it's the intro that Tommy does before the All-Ireland. It's the build-up to it, and he goes into the storytelling behind it. As we all know, Tommy and storytelling, it's just magic when he gets going. So it's a really special moment. So yeah, if you do anything, definitely tune in. So Owen, tell us, where have you been?
Well, I'm currently in Langton's at the moment in Kilkenny, which of course was the place that served up Tommy Walsh's goujons down through the years that were the nutritionists behind the 4 in a row and subsequent 2 in a rows. Over the last little while I've been kind of travelling around the county. We'll bring you loads of stuff over the course of the next few hours. We were speaking to Dave O'Neill, who is the chairman of Greg Ballycallan, who is a Limerick man, a little bit later on. We were speaking to Dicko Gorman, a farmer that Tommy Walsh actually recommended speaking to as well. We sat down for a cup of tea with him. We'll bring that to you in a little while. Eddie O'Connor is a former Kilkenny captain. We sat down with him as well, and we'll play out a piece with Kilkenny Elvis in just a moment. But before we do that, Aisling, I just want to give you a sense of what the Kilkenny people is actually saying. Interestingly, on the front page, you may have Kilkenny supporters on their wall looking ahead to the weekend. But on the back page of the Kilkenny people, it is not hurling at all. It is football fever, which dominates proceedings. The junior championship winners have managed to hog the headlines. That being said, they do have an absolutely fantastic supplement in the middle, which is about 1 billion pages, and I love the front cover of it. Star Wars, A New Hope. And this is an interesting angle on it all. A New Hope. Is Kilkenny winning this weekend a new hope, or is it actually a realisation that the Death Star was infallible all along and Darth Vader is alive and well and kicking? It's interesting that they've gone for that angle. I've certainly, as we'll do this over the next little while, and when we get to our quick picks, I've been kind of swept away by the quiet optimism that seems to have existed in Kilkenny over the last 24 hours. They're very, very persuasive people when they play down their chances. Let's just put it like that. But we'll get to that in a little while. Miles Cavanagh is where we're going to start this morning. He is a man who lives in the city centre of Kilkenny here. He is a massive, massive Kilkenny fan. We're going to show you around the front garden of his house in this video. It is decorated beyond all belief. The thing about Miles Cavanagh is that he is also a massive Elvis Presley fan, and he is one of Kilkenny's foremost Elvis tribute artists. So here's how our conversation went.
Would you believe it? Elvis said it to his fans because they were screaming at him, "You're the king." He said, "There's only one king, the Lord God Jesus Christ."
Do you not think Henry has a level above him?
No, well, Henry is the king as well, but he's not the king anymore since he left and went to Galway. You could be walking down the street there now. One could be dressed as Elton John, and another could be dressed as Rod Stewart, and people say, "Hi, Rod. Hi, Elton." Well, if you're dressed as a king, say, "Elvis, come on, you get a picture." "Of course, ma'am, you get a picture, baby. I love you, honey. I love you too. You see the movie, baby?" "I saw the movie, honey. You look well, Elvis. Thank you very much."
Yeah, exactly. It's that sort of relationship that people have with you that they think is Elvis.
Actually, I mean, I can't walk down the street without people shouting out the car, "Go on the king, go on the king. Are we going to do it on Sunday?" Of course we can. Limerick will be all shook up. They'll be staying in the Harper Hotel and they'll be crying in the chapel. Elvis's great-great-great-grandfather came from Hackerstown, County Carlow. So we have Irish connections like with Elvis, and there's an Elvis Presley grave in Hackettstown that someday I'll probably go down and see can I find it, because a couple of years ago one of the locals, this car pulled up, hard car, and this lovely lady got out, she all dressed up. She said to him, and guy sat in the front driver's seat, he looked like Elvis, he spoke like Elvis, he talked like Elvis. And they said, sure, we're looking for a grave. There's a Presley grave here. Yeah, ma'am, it's up in the graveyard. Could you show me? Could you show me? And the man said, I guarantee, he said, it was Elvis. He said, Elvis never died, he said. Because we were in Graceland in 2006. We actually saw him looking out the window. We went back into security, we said, Elvis is alive. He never died.
I'd be 90% sure you're correct.
Well, I guarantee you, would you believe it? We actually believe that he faked his own death.
What age is he now?
He would be 1935 to this year, 2022. He would be what? He would be 84, 85, yeah, 84. He would be 85. If we can subtract that, 35 from 22. 87, sorry, 87. And we reckon he's still alive, and we reckon he came over to Hackettstown to look for his roots.
If you're ever at an Elvis convention or a gathering of various Elvis tribute artists, do you ever look around and think that could be him?
Well, funny enough, now that you said it, we were in Vegas one year. Myself and my wife went over to Vegas in 2008. We actually thought it was Elvis.
Probably was. Like, did he look like him?
The wife said, he spoke like him, he talked like him. And the wife said, you know something? She says, I actually think that's Elvis, she says.
Can I ask you a question? If you had a choice between two of these things happening, you wake up on Sunday, say you lie in a little bit, and you wake up in the afternoon, and you wake up to one of these two pieces of news. A, Kilkenny have won the All-Ireland, or B, it has been confirmed Elvis is alive. Which one of those two situations would you rather see arise?
Wow, do I have to pick one? I just can't pick, I can't pick the two, no. The All-Ireland. I'm sorry, Elvis, but I'm sorry. The All-Ireland to us is just, it's in our hearts. I know the King is the King and I love the King, but the All-Ireland, to win an All-Ireland is just, my God, it's like winning the lotto. I'd rather win an All-Ireland and then wake up again and say, yeah, the King is alive.
Well, I think we both know that the King is really alive, you know, somewhere.
It's hard to know. I mean, I'd love if it came out, if it came out that the King was alive, that it was all a big, he faked his own death.
What does Elvis think of the current Kilkenny team?
Well, I think they're brilliant. I swear to God, I think Cody's a god. In Kilkenny, if we meet Brian Crody, we don't say, hiya Brian, we just genuflect, because we just met Jesus. And this is the way Brian is. And he's a fierce, nice fella. Oh my God, you couldn't. I mean, on Sunday, I'll go over to Langton's, I'll put the suit on, I'll walk in and I'll sing, it's the wonder of Brian. And he'll smile, he'll say, go on the cats. And I go around the town beeping a horn if we win. If we lose, God knows what we'll do. I don't know. I'd probably be staying at the Harper Hotel or crying in the chapel.
Very well played.
I'll do a little song for Brian Cody, who is my best friend and a gentleman. His birthday was there last week. It's called The Wonder of Brian. Oh, no one else can understand you when everything he does is right. He gives us hope and inspiration. He gives us strength to carry on. He's always there to lend a hand in everything we do. That's the wonder of Brian.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
What an absolute character. Oh my God. We just genuflect when we see Cody.
Yeah. I mean, it's what other thing are you supposed to do? I guess when you see Brian Cody, that guy, Miles Cavanagh, is an extraordinarily popular man. I was told to come back at a later point when I first arrived yesterday afternoon because there was simply too much media at his house.
Oh wow! And so is his whole house decorated inside as well?
Inside is mostly an Elvis shrine. Outside is Kilkenny. Quite a trippy Kilkenny setup. Like there are some strange, like as you saw in the video, there's like Teletubbies and very strange references that I didn't really get out in Different Garden. But it's very interesting. You could spend like an hour there looking through all the different ornaments he's got set up in the black and amber.
And you asked him a tough question. Would he rather meet Elvis or win the All-Ireland? He paused, but in the end, he went for the All-Ireland.
He did. I guess that's probably just the instant gratification. It's coming this week, and I think he's obviously leaned into the conspiracy that Elvis is alive anyway. So I think he can have both in that conversation, I think.
Brilliant. And who else were you speaking to then?
Okay, so yesterday I was told by Tommy Walsh actually to give this guy a call. This is a fella called Dicko Gorman. He is a farmer who lives just outside Piltown in County Kilkenny. He was actually featured in an Aldi ad a few years ago as one of the farmers in one of their ads talking about beef. And he is a big hurling man. He's also a massive racing head, as a lot of people in Kilkenny are. And we got talking about hurling, we got talking about racing, but he just starts off here by telling us a little bit about his family.
I have 3 children, 3 girls and a boy. He and myself are married to a Glenmore woman. Glenmore blood, like a fella used to say down the road, you couldn't beat it. Mikey Noel and Last of Mercy, a great friend of mine. And the 3 girls then got married, and they're married into Hurling. Hurling is their God, Hurling. They love Hurling, the women. And the young fella didn't hurl, but he trained horses. And he was very successful at it, but he's working for a man now called Max Morris, and his wife down the road, they have a stud farm. And he's
This is a big racing area here as well, that's the one thing we should say.
Yeah, big racing area here. Aidan O'Brien started down the road. I started with him, actually. I gave 10 years with Aidan on the road with the horses and doing the galloping, looking after him the best I could, started him in the best way possible. But there was no need to start Aidan. Aidan started himself.
He's not doing too badly.
No, not doing too badly. Great, very successful individual. Great family as well. Joseph is down the road here now where Aidan started, and Donica is outside Ballydoyle there, up the road a bit from him, training there as well. Very, very successful family. The Crowleys, where they started off, Joseph, lots of mercy on Joseph, he's gone too. And Sarah was there, she was the key woman behind the whole setup, great woman and a great family.
You've obviously, when you talk about the black and amber, seen quite a bit during your days. You've been going to Kilkenny matches for how long at this point?
Well, I was going to matches since back, I'll tell you, I was with my father at a match in Dublin one day, or in Kilkenny, and Kilkenny were playing Dublin. And I'll always remember it, sitting on the seat above in the Nolan Park, and the Dublin team. They were a great team at the time now, but I was very young. And there were 2 lads playing with them, 2 little baldy men, but they were black hair on them like sheep, and they were called bootmans. They were brilliant hurlers, outstanding ball players, fast, great men. And the 2 Foleys, Lar Foley and Des Foley, in the middle of the field. They played Munster, they played Leinster football and hurling. They were legends, great men. But there were a man playing that day stuck out in my mind, and it was unbelievable how he stuck in my mind all these years. He was the first skillful, great player that I saw, and he always an outstanding hurler. His name was, he was a Tullahoe man as well. He was Sheahan Classy. He was a brilliant player, brilliant, outstanding hurler. And he went on to win All Irelands, and yeah, that was part of the whole history of that going back.
Can we go back? You mentioned Eddie Kerr there a moment ago. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to watch him in the flesh, year in, year out?
Yeah, great thrill. Fantastic time. We used to go to Croke Park that time. Well, all them early years, we get the train above in Kilkenny. A crowd, we'd be picking the team for the train the night before. And we'd be in the pub. And we'd be saying, you going. And next thing we'd arrive with about 10 or 12 of us. And we'd hit off on the train. Mighty crack. Mighty. But the Kerrs, the Purses, the Delaney's, them boys, the Hendersons, well, they were serious men. They didn't care. They didn't mind about big days or quiet days or any other. Every day was the same to him. They were absolutely brilliant. On the day, though, Billy Fitzpatrick there, from the corner flag, I see him one day in Croke Park, from the corner flag, he scored points. Unbelievable stick work. Unbelievable. And, Kerr was brilliant hurler. Fantastic speed. He had everything. He had speed, skill, stuff. Everything was in him. Then you go to the Carey boy. The boy of the Careys, DJ. What a legend. The whole place, you'd meet people for the county final in Kilkenny. You could meet a lad from Carlow, or you could meet him from Port Leash, or you could meet him from anywhere in the country. Come to see Carey. Carey was one of the greatest of all time. I suppose maybe the greatest, but then you had the Shefflins, Henry, King Henry. I knew when he was only a child buying cattle off his father, Henry. And great family, the Shefflins, great people, great hurling people, great memories of them lads. Then, I suppose, you'd go on to the present day. That's what you want to hear about today, is the hurling Sunday. This is going to be the challenge. This is the biggest of it ever put in front of a Kilkenny team. You have a crowd coming from Limerick. Some of the greatest athletes ever was. They are big men, strong men. They're able to hurl. They have speed. They have skill. And they have the money behind them, which is more important. They have J.P. McManus, one of the greatest racing legends of his time. That man say, do this, do that, they'll do it. And Kiley have him backing him as well. Would Kiley and that outfit, they're going to be some team to topple. They have the skill, they have the ignorance too. They are big ignorant men, and they'll go. But they're all small little point in it. Have they the hurling? Have they the skill of the boys? The boys will be there. They'll be a good team. They're a good team. They're up with the best of them now. And I'll talk about the legend. I'll give him me number one now, that he's the best I ever saw. That's T.J. Reid.
The best ever?
Best ever. He's a man, played with bad teams in Kilkenny, carried them on his back, do the same thing every day, get some of the greatest scores ever scored. I see him in Kilkenny one day, and he scored a point from 80 yards out over his shoulder, out looking, went over the black spot. There was a man beside me called Ned Welsh of Piltown. I was talking to him yesterday. The coal man, we called him. He was sitting beside me. He turned around. Dickie said that only one man can do that, and that's T.J. Reid. T.J. Reid is one of the greatest of them all. And Eddie Kerr said on the paper one day, he could be the greatest that ever got all. And I was going into Thurles, and I met Kerr. And I said to him, Eddie, what about the statement that he was going to be one of the greatest? Well, says Kerr, you have another 2 years to prove it. A couple of years more, and he will be the greatest. That's 5 years ago. He's after doing a lot of hurling since, and no doubt about it. Sunday, he'll be there again. He'll be one of the big men they'll have to watch. For tremendous striker of the ball, brain. He makes it look easy. Good hands. One of the best I saw, T.J. Reid. And I believe that Kilkenny will give Limerick, I don't know will they beat him. I don't know will they beat him now. But I'll tell you one thing, they'll give it a good try. They're brilliant men. They were. And we have them coming again. We have young lads coming there around in different parishes. They won the under 21 this year. Couple of good young lads on it. There are a couple from Winegap there, and a few good young lads. I'll tell you one thing. Winegap is only up the road from us here. There'll be plenty. One time, that man from Clare, Brian, and not Brian Lohan, the other man there, he was the manager there one time.
Davy?
No. He was on television.
Loughnane?
The Gel Loughnane said, one time someone said to him, So there'll be a lot of good young lads coming around the country. They'll rise up again. They'll different lads go. Limerick got him. And Jarl answered back and he said, listen to me, he said, do you think they won't be coming in Kilkenny? They're a conveyor belt there, he said. They're always coming off it. They'll be in Kilkenny too. Yeah. That's why it's such a great county for hurling, because they know nothing else. We won a football match the other day now, which was unbelievable. They won a junior football All Ireland. And most of the lads were from Mulnavat on it. And I suppose football in Kilkenny, well, for years and years, you know how football was in Kilkenny. We don't play soccer in Kilkenny. We play a bit, nothing great. Hurling is our religion, and that's our game. And if we're bet Sunday again, what difference? We'll have them coming again.
Can I ask then, just to wrap up, how would you feel on Sunday if Kilkenny were climbing the steps of the Hogan stand?
I'd be very proud. Probably to see a Richie Reid going up now will be a big honour, because in fairness to the Reids, their father before him, and as a matter of fact, his grandmother was a first cousin of mine. She was Manny Kelgrave, Jenny Manny, and married a man called Paddy Reid, Kiltarkin, and he brought all them young lads, his own young lads, and then TJ's Sean's young lads. He started all them and load them into the car and bring them on. And I tell you one thing, the Richie Reid, best club hurler in Ireland at the present time. There's no doubt about that. He is the best. And to see him going up the steps will be a big honour. Big honour for the county. And I'm Stephanie's family. And Sean, a great friend of mine, Sean Reid, we went, bought a lot of cattle up with Sean. I used to buy old cattle in the country that time, bought all his cattle, and we returned the compliment here. We were feeding cattle ourselves. TJ was a rep for Conley's, and we bought the nuts off of TJ. And TJ come in and have the old cup of tea and the chat, and a lovely man, a lovely fella, and best of luck to him with his new wife and baby. And the very best of luck to him. I hope he'll many happy days, because he gave us great days.
Dicko Gorman there, a local farmer in Kilkenny. Owen, you definitely can feel the emotion, the passion. When you ask the question, how would you feel to climb the steps of the Hogan stand, you could see he got a lump in his throat before he answered.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the number one man in the TJ Reid fan club as well. It's interesting whenever you speak to somebody who's seen hurling for decades and decades and decades. I don't know that they often go for the player who maybe isn't currently playing. That I think maybe we were all sort of guilty of recency bias. It's really interesting that he kind of went for TJ Reid as the greatest hurler he's ever seen. And I think that conversation was maybe something that we had more a few years ago. That's topic around TJ, and I'm not sure why that was. It seems that conversation has kind of drifted away over the last couple of years, maybe because Limerick have just become more dominant, and when we have conversations around the greatest of all time, it can only involve Limerick because they're the only team who've won All Ireland over the last 2 years. So I just think that if they win on Sunday, now this isn't something that the Kilkenny players are thinking about at all, but if they win on Sunday, I think that TJ Reid conversation about his place in the pantheon of greats just explodes back into the mainstream, and people will immediately start saying where does he actually rest in terms of the greats, and people put him right up against Shefflin and DJ Carey immediately if he manages to get the job done. And I think that Clare performance was just a reminder of what he can do, what he can absolutely still do. Nobody is suggesting that TJ Reid has gone anywhere.
No, absolutely not. It is nice that we're actually talking about him as one of the greatest as a current player, because as you said, sometimes a lot of people can look to the past and talk about former players, but he's just been unbelievable. He's in the form of his life, and I think if Kilkenny are to do it on Sunday, he has to be in that top form that he's been in the last few games. Absolutely. And so you've been to Limerick and Kilkenny now. So I suppose, what is the mood like in each camp? Who's, I suppose, most confident, or what's the feeling you're getting?
There definitely seems to be this feeling in Kilkenny that, you're sure let Limerick go and put their bunting up and let them get excited and let them get very, very confident about this game this weekend. Like when we hear from Eddie O'Connor a little bit later on, you'll definitely get that sense that maybe Limerick, there's a sense of, they're still trying to appreciate being in an All-Ireland every year, that they maybe feel that this is a team that's going to give them the greatest times of their life, whereas Kilkenny, it kind of feels, we're back in an All-Ireland, no big deal. And as underdogs, there's a certain danger to having a conversation with Kilkenny people, because there is a similarity with Kerry people where they just like to downplay their chances that little bit, even though we all saw what they did in that semi-final against Clare. They're a pretty awesome unit when they're in top form.
I think that's the scariest thing of all, that Kilkenny are going in as underdogs. I think that is brilliant for them. They love that. They're going to relish that, and that's what's most scary for Limerick.
Yeah, like I do think though that Limerick have got this incredible ability to not let that sort of stuff impact their course. Like I think last year we were maybe having the same conversation, about Cork being an underdog, getting that big win against Kilkenny after extra time in the semi-final, and we thought, that's the dangerous animal that maybe Limerick would be a little bit vulnerable to, and it just didn't materialise that way. The big difference here though is just Cody, and the fact that there are All-Ireland winners in this team. Getting up the hill the first time is a really challenging thing to do, and I think the Waterford and Cork aspects of the last couple of years were deer in the headlights sort of thing, as in they had to get up the mountain the first time, whereas this Kilkenny team have so many All-Ireland winners in there, not so many, but a handful of All-Ireland winners in there, and it kind of feels like even those that don't have All-Ireland medals have already got them, and it kind of feels that they already have that experience for whatever reason. Maybe it's just the jersey, maybe it's just Cody, but that psychological aspect is a really interesting one.
Yeah, big time. They both have a lot of experience going into the game, and we're going to chat more about this later on, Owen. But for now, OTB AM, it's brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're turning our attention now to the final test between Ireland and New Zealand, with it all on the line tomorrow, and we're joined to chat about this now with the All Blacks legend Justin Marshall. Justin, good morning. How's it going?
Good morning to you. Well, it's good evening here, but I know it's morning over there. So, yes, lovely to be on your show, and the excitement levels here in New Zealand, as I'm sure they are all across the island, about tomorrow's test match, are really feverish out there. The city is abuzz.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show, and this third test is going to go right to the wire. There was a massive reaction here in Ireland to the Irish team beating the All Blacks at home for the first time. What was the reaction like there in New Zealand to Ireland winning?
Well, there's certainly plenty of Guinness left over here. I'd imagine there wasn't plenty of Guinness left in Ireland, but yeah, it was a little bit more sombre here. Obviously, the All Blacks haven't been beaten by Ireland in 115 years on our soil, so there was certainly that sense of that Ireland certainly deserved to win the game, but from an All Blacks perspective, they've been outplayed comprehensively, and it's set the series up perfectly. But it always does hurt when history gets changed to a negative, but certainly nobody throughout New Zealand, including the public, the media, and I expect probably also the players, didn't feel that the best team on the night didn't win. So, Ireland thoroughly deserved the kudos for their performance, and I've set the series up nicely.
And overall, what do you think that people think of this Irish team? Do you think at this moment in time there's a little bit of doubt there in the All Blacks with facing Ireland tomorrow?
There certainly is. Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about the fact that this Irish team is heavily respected. We feel that they're very well coached. They're a very well drilled side. They know their game plan incredibly well. They're very consistent with their selection, so the players are very aware of each other. The combinations have great synergy, whereas the All Blacks at the moment are all over the place. They are constantly changing their team. They are struggling to break down the Irish defence. I know the first test was flattering for the All Blacks, but many people here thought it was flattering because they actually had a bit of Irish luck on their side. The bounce of the ball kind of went their way. They had some intercepts. They probably didn't construct the game as well as Ireland. And actually in that game, Ireland dominated possession and territory and all of the key stats, but just not the scoreboard. They consequently did that again last weekend. So what they've done here is actually generate a huge amount of respect for the style and manner of rugby that they are playing. It's very New Zealand, friendly, because we love teams that play with the ball, and they are doing that, and they are scoring tries to beat the All Blacks, not kicking goals, scoring tries. So they have been incredibly well received out here.
Justin, you've been in All Blacks teams that have maybe not got over the line in World Cups or maybe have felt the backlash from the public when they maybe expected you to win every single game in front of you. How does the backlash now compare to some of your experiences as a player?
Yeah, I had to suffer through that a couple of World Cups. You know, we went out in semi-finals, and there's always a massive review internally, but externally as well, because the public have a vested interest in the All Blacks. They do say that being the All Black coach is a harder job than being the Prime Minister of New Zealand, because the whole country rides the results of the All Blacks. So when the All Blacks lose, it's heavily scrutinised. And the thing with the All Blacks is every sort of man, woman, baby, child, whatever it might be, follows the team. So when they're not performing, everybody feels it, and everyone has an opinion. That's probably the biggest thing. There's always times where there is a building process. I certainly felt that in my time, you got to be able to take the criticism and move on, because the expectation levels here are so high that they expect the All Blacks to win every single test match, regardless. The fallout here has been a lot on the coach, Ian Foster. The players have been criticised, but he's copping the main part of the criticism. So it's a massive game for him in terms of how he goes forward for the rest of the year, leading to the World Cup as well, the pressure he's under this week.
Do you think that's fair that the focus is on Foster?
What was that? Sorry, I missed that.
Do you think it's fair that the most of the focus is on the head coach?
Yeah, I do. I'm certainly not comfortable with the way the All Blacks are playing. I certainly feel that they're not playing the traditional game that the All Blacks are well known for, which is getting their back three into the game, so the wingers and the fullback, getting space, because there's massive attacking potential out there. But at the moment, they're really struggling to get the ball into those outside channels where those players are so lethal. They're being shut down and beaten quite comprehensively at the breakdown. Their set piece has been okay, but I think the criticism is off the back of they don't seem to be going out there and constructing a game like Ireland are, and that's what's impressing everybody with Ireland. They're quite comfortable to go 18, 20 phases with the ball to beat the defence. The All Blacks, after 5-6 phases, if they get stuck, are resorting to kicking the ball away, and that is very much not in our DNA, to kick the ball away because we're lost for ideas. That's very outside of what New Zealand rugby thinking is usually like. So, yeah, I think it is justified that they haven't formulated a game plan to bring their key X-factor players into the game, and then they look a little bit lost when they're under pressure. Very unlike them. So that's why they're saying, well, what sort of coaching are they getting, and how are the leaders standing up on the field?
Yeah, it definitely feels that he's a man under pressure at the minute. But to get rid of a coach a year out from a World Cup, it's not ideal preparation.
No, it's not, and it won't happen. As much as people are crying for Ian Foster to get the sack, the biggest thing, and everybody knows this within sport, when a new coach comes in, it takes him a little bit of time to establish his culture and his mindset, and to galvanise the players in the way that he thinks, and then they get their synergy off that. But also, if you're a new coach coming in, if it was me, for example, you completely wipe the slate. You don't want any of the support staff, so all the other coaches have to go, and everybody is, and all the the other peripheral members of the support staff. You're talking physios, doctors, because a new coach will bring in the people that he trusts and he knows. So you're talking a massive clean out. And in the modern day, with all the rugby we've lost under COVID in the last 2 years, the New Zealand Rugby Union, like many unions, wouldn't have, I don't think, the finances to support getting rid of an entire team and paying them out and then bringing in a new one. So, I'd be very, very surprised if that happens. So we're really hopeful that Ian Foster and the players can get their act together and start playing the type of rugby that we know they're capable of.
And there is some changes to the team for tomorrow. Is this the strongest All Blacks team that you've seen yet of the series?
You know what? You see, you hit it right on the nail and right on the head there. The problem is there's more changes. And so when you change around key areas, of the game. So the midfield is one of them, where they've brought David Havili into the midfield with Rieko Ioane. They've made a change in the back three where Will Jordan's going into the right wing position, and also the loose forwards and the front row. Now, they all are areas where you need combos and players that are familiar with each other. And when you get under pressure, you look to the guy beside you, you know that familiar face, and you've been to the cold face before, and you get on with it. So constantly changing the team is not helping get that rhythm that I'm talking about. Conversely, Ireland, I could have named Ireland's team this week, to be perfectly honest, because it's just so well established, and barring injury, like what Andy Farrell was forced to do with Ringrose, those players know each other so very well. So yeah, look, there's been some changes. People are saying it's a better All Black side, but what worries me is it's a side that's going to take a little bit of time to click again and gel, and they can't afford to do that, because Ireland have, in the first 2 test matches, come like a bull out of the gate and started so well in the first 20 minutes. And that's when a test match can get away from you. So, look, the players that are coming in are quality players, but I am very wary of the fact that it's more changes in significant positions, and I'm hoping that they find their rhythm quickly, or we could be staring down the barrel even before half-time, which wouldn't be nice.
It would be on our end, but yeah, it's funny because we were actually we were actually hoping for changes over the last while. Maybe not now coming into the final test game. Obviously there's a lot on the line, but you're dead right in terms of players being aware of each other, being comfortable with each other. You're going to play a hell of a lot better if you're aware who's beside you and certain plays. And there's also exciting times as well with Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. He is set to make his debut. He's got a good story too.
Yeah, he absolutely has. Started in rugby. He was an age group star, and then rugby snaffled him, as they do with certain players that have massive potential when they're very young, before they really get to grow up in rugby. Rugby league get them at a much earlier age than what rugby identifies them. So he went off, had a very successful rugby league career, both internationally and mostly in Australia. Ended up with New Zealand Warriors, and then left them to get into rugby. Has had a very good season with the Blues. Many were surprised that he got selected. They thought that he was still a bit green and needed more time, but he certainly does have a unique.
We've just lost him there, Justin, but we'll get him back in just a moment's time. It was actually interesting. I asked that question on because Roger, he obviously maybe will come on. He'll make his debut this weekend. It'll be a massive moment for him. But he actually spoke about in an article how he would actually read the plays on an iPad, and he was so concerned of what certain plays, and they said to him, you put the iPad down and just concentrate on going out there and expressing yourself, and don't be so caught up in the play. So yeah, that was an interesting part that I'm going to maybe speak to Justin about too.
Yeah, I wonder that's kind of probably an interesting dilemma for a lot of the New Zealand coaching team at the moment. I'd suspect the sort of off the cuff nature versus the, oh God, we need to get control of this team back and we need to coach them to better results. So I wonder if they straitjacketed a little bit too much. Like, I guess tomorrow will tell us a lot, because the pressure doesn't really get any higher than the entire nation, as Justin points out there, breathing on your neck after a couple of bad results.
This is it, absolutely. And we have Justin back, I think. Brilliant. Yes, Justin, we were just talking about Roger there. I was saying to Owen that he actually had spoke about in an article how he was looking at plays on an iPad, and Ian Foster just sort of put his hand on his shoulder and said, put the iPad down, we want you to go out and play and express yourself, and it's not about being robots out there.
Yeah, sorry about that. We're obviously on the under end of the world. I'm not sure how we lost that connection. I was regaling some Liam Neeson, actually, comparing his particular sets of skills that he has to Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, and the internet didn't like it for some reason. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, I think that's what they need. I think they need to show the ability to play on instinct and be not robotic, but be instinctive. If something appears in front of you, break out of the pattern and use your skills. And I'm certainly sure that that's why Roger Tuivasa-Sheck has been included in this week's squad, because, pre-contact, his footwork is out of this world. He's super explosive, and he'll be somebody and something that the Irish haven't seen before. So maybe a little lace up the sleeves that the All Blacks have coming off the bench.
Justin, I remember we were speaking to you before Ireland played New Zealand in 2019 at the World Cup, and obviously we were getting your take as a former scrum half on Conor Murray and his importance to the Joe Schmidt game plan. What's been your view of Jamison Gibson Park in the green shirt so far? He seems to have come straight in. He's done a really, really good job under Andy Farrell over the last 12 to 18 months. Do you think he's been so pivotal to how Ireland have changed and their style of play, which is a little bit more expressive in 2022?
Yeah, I certainly do. I think there's no rocket science behind the selection of Jamison Gibson Park. He certainly plays his role differently than other halfbacks, and because of that, he brings in a unique style. Like Conor Murray is still a very good international scrum half and incredibly capable. So they have a 1-2 punch, really, Ireland. I'm quite surprised that Conor's not been getting more game time, but if you notice and watch Jamison Gibson Park, what he's very good at, a lot of scrum halves will go to the breakdown and they'll clear the ball quickly like Aaron Smith does. If you keep an eye on Jamison Gibson Park, what he does is he gets to the ball very quickly, but then he bounces out with a couple of steps. So he actually lifts the ball. Instead of passing it straight away, he'll take a couple of steps, which brings defenders towards him. They have to consider him. And that gives time for players around him to run better lines, run better angles, and it gives Johnny Sexton also time to then make his movement of what Gibson Park is doing with depth and get him behind runners. And that's what is really causing New Zealand defence big problems. That little combo in doing that is really hard to stop because you have to consider Gibson Park in case he decides to run. So, yeah, I certainly think that it's evolved and changed the way that Ireland play and particularly attack, and that's why he's been selected. Now that might have sounded quite complicated. So if it was too complicated for everybody out there, I do apologise. But you asked me something about scrum halves, I'm going to go in depth. It was my old position.
I'd also be interested to hear about Johnny Sexton. Is it the best version of Johnny we've seen at the moment? Yeah, without doubt. How bad is this out here? Many people are saying here at the moment that if we had Johnny Sexton in our side, that would mean him replacing Beauden Barrett. We would be much more organised and would be much more game plan orientated. He's just pulling all the strings out there. He's doing such a fantastic job. I watched them end on at the weekend, and he is very much at the peak of his powers right now. He's incredibly important to Ireland and the way that they play. But there's no doubt that he is the catalyst for Ireland's 2 to 3 prong attack that is causing the All Blacks problem. Every time it touches or goes through Johnny Sexton, there are major options off him that All Blacks are struggling to try and break down. And where does he line up alongside some of the great out halves? How does he compare to, say, Dan Carter? He walks in their footsteps without doubt, and I think his record speaks of that. Not only a great Irish player, Leinster man, but also a British and Irish lion. The caps that he's accumulated, his resilience, the way that he's evolved and changed his game. He walks in the footsteps of the Carters, of the Johnny Wilkinsons, of the world in recent years. He's very much deserved of that as well. He's a legend of Irish rugby and world rugby, and massively respected here in New Zealand for the way he plays. And overall, Justin, then, how do you see it going tomorrow? You know what? I had Alan Quinlan on last week on Sky TV, and he absolutely bottled it because I said to him, mate, this is going out to 5 million people, and he said, oh no, yeah, the All Blacks will win comfortably this afternoon. It's like, all right, come on, playing up to the crowd. So unfortunately for you guys, I'm not gonna play up to the Irish listeners. Unfortunately, I'm gonna stick true to my All Black history and say that the All Blacks will get the job done in a very close encounter. But I have to say that. But if I was perfectly honest, I'm not super confident in saying it, but I am saying it. Go ahead, Owen.
Well, I was just going to say, Quinny called an Ireland win on our show last week, Justin.
Oh, yeah, I'll tell you what, mate. The superlatives that come out of his mouth sometimes are absolutely outstanding. I think I'm catching him for a beer in about an hour. So don't worry, I'll make sure that I know that you've told me that. I'll let them know.
Brilliant, Justin. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Anytime, guys. Thanks very much for having me on.
Yeah, a massive game to look forward to at the weekend. Now, it's All-Ireland Hurling final week and we got 4 priceless tickets to give away on the show this week, and it's all with thanks to Bord Gáis Energy. 2022 marks the 6th year of Bord Gáis Energy sponsorship of the GAA Hurling All-Ireland Senior Championship, and to celebrate every day this week we are giving away €150 one-for-all vouchers, and more importantly, each week we will go into Friday's draw for an incredible grand prize of €1,500 one-for-all voucher and 4 tickets to Sunday's All-Ireland final between Limerick and Kilkenny. To enter, tune into tonight's show. It's all with thanks to Bord Gáis Energy. You can search #Gift of the Gab for more. And after the break, we're back in Kilkenny where Owen chatted to former All-Ireland winning captain Eddie O'Connor this week ahead of Sunday's All-Ireland Hurling final. See you then.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
This summer, we're bringing you double Koi gig.
I thought that was going to be a much tighter game.
I cannot tell you the audible gasps that there were in the press box yesterday. They looked as stunned as the team on the pitch did.
I thought that they were stronger than that. I thought that they were tactically more aware than that.
For the best insight and analysis from this summer's Euros, subscribe to the Koi Gig pod on the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
I tell you now, it was the greatest moment of my life. The day I captained Kilkenny in '93, and it's hard to believe now that it's nearly 30 years ago. I was lucky enough to go on the Kilkenny team in 1990, and we played Tipperary in the All-Ireland final. 91, we were beaten. 92 we played Cork in the final, we beat them, and 93 we beat Galway in the final, and I was lucky in 93 that I was captain, and as I said, it was the greatest moment of my life.
Those moments in the 1990s, when it sticks out to you at this point, what set that Kilkenny team apart from the others?
I'd say a lot of it was down to the management at the time was Ollie Welsh, and I would compare Ollie maybe to be in the same bracket maybe as Brian Cody, even though he mightn't be as ruthless. Ollie at the time, came in there after when Pat Henderson stepped aside and Kilkenny needed rebuilding, and Ollie went around the county and picked up players from junior clubs, intermediate clubs and Kilkenny and senior clubs, and he moulded us all into being a great team. And at the time we had a mixture of experience between players like Christy Heffernan and Liam Fennelly, and we had young players coming through like my brother Willie and DJ Carey and all this, so we had a very, very good mixture, and Ollie was a wonderful man and a great manager, and he knew how to get the best out of us.
It seems like a pretty stupid question, but you saw him up close and personal. You were there when he burst onto the scene. DJ Carey, he's often held up in regard that no other Kilkenny player can hold. Why is that from your perspective?
To me, DJ was the greatest player that was ever born. He was a wonderful player, and I think our game plan at the time, Ollie told me one night in Nolan Park, was plan A was to get the ball into DJ, plan B get the ball to DJ, plan C was get the ball to DJ, and I said to Ollie one night, why is the one plan the whole time? Well, sure, Eddie, he's your best player. He said, if you can feed your best player as quick as you can and as often as you can with the ball, he'll win the matches for you. And how right he was. Do
you think that's still a tactic that a lot of people employ today?
Actually, to me, the tactics going today, there's too much old codology going on in hurling, and it is very, very much going down the road of football where, you're zonal marking and you're playing balls over and back the field, and it's not very nice on the eyes, to tell you the truth, to watch hurling now compared to there's no really hurling now off the cuff where it was in the 80s and 90s. The hurling that time was off the cuff, and to me now it's all kind of programmed hurling now, and as I said, at times it can be a hard watch, and I'd much prefer watching the games back in the 1890s, not because I was playing myself now or anything that way, but I thought the hurling that time was even a lot better than the hurling today.
And would you say that's the vast majority of teams today that you don't like watching?
Yeah, it's not, because there's no, as I said, like there's no off the cuff type of hurling. Like that time, if you got a fast ball into the full forward line, the full forwards, whether it was Liam Fennelly, Tom Dempsey or Nicky English, the game was finished in a blink. Like now it's all sweeper systems. You have 7, 8, 9 men behind the ball. You have numerous numerous kind of, how would I say, scrums around the middle of the field, and it's dog eat dog out there. Like, but as I said, like there's no off the cuff type of hurling like anymore. Very, very rarely now you see a player hitting the ball on the ground, like compared that time when you had Johnny Pinkett and all them, Johnny Dooley of Offaly. They were wonderful stick men and all great ground stroke hurling, and and as I said, now even the hurling this days, while I enjoy it a lot, like there are times when it can be hard to watch.
What about if you were to be inserted in today's game? Like, do you think that you'd be a bit of an outlier as a man marker? Like, do you think it's kind of so systemic at this point, or systematic, that you don't actually get the opportunity to go one-on-one too often with an opposition man?
Yeah, well, I always felt like my priority is a back, and what I don't like about hurling now is there are too many easy scores being got. When I was brought up in Glenmore, my priority was always to be John Henderson type corner back, was at all costs stop my man from scoring, and I felt if I held the corner forward scoreless that I'd done a great job. And with the exception of Cathal Barrett at Tipperary and Mikey Butler at the moment with Kilkenny, I don't see that out there. The trademark now for defending is you hit every second ball, let the corner forward score 4 or 5 points, and you clear 9 or 10 balls, and it looks like exhibition type hurling then compared to what it was that time. You go back to the 80s there, where you had Brian Cody playing full back for Kilkenny, you had Dicko Gorman on the other corner, and you had John Henderson, and without being too abrupt, like they'd break your neck in order not to leave you score, like. And Ger Henderson the same way, their centre back, and go on to the likes of the Mick Jacobs of Wexford and all them, and Pat Hartigan. That time hurling was, but stop your man from scoring. Like now it's kind of a free for all. It's kind of exhibition hurling a lot of the time. You score a point, we score a point, you score a goal, we score a goal, and I think a lot of the good defending has gone out of the game.
So the hurlers aren't necessarily better, they're just getting more time?
No, I don't think the hurling is any better now compared to what it was in the 80s and 90s, and I'd argue that with anyone. You go back to the 90s, Clare won an All-Ireland, Offaly won an All-Ireland, Kilkenny won an All-Ireland, Wexford won an All-Ireland, Tip won an All-Ireland. The hurling was ultra competitive, so it was that time, but to me now it's not near as competitive, and the way while fitness levels have increased 100%, like to me, the hurling is not as good now as what it was back in the 80s and 90s. And you've also got to remember that time there was no round robin system. There was no back door that time. It was you got one Sunday to get it right. And, we won 2 All-Irelands out of 3 in 91, 92 and 93. And had we got a back door, I'd say in 94, 95, we could have easily went on and won 3 or 4 in a row. But the back door wasn't there at that time. And while hurling is still at a very, very good place now, to me it wasn't near as good as what it was back then.
Are they more skilled today?
I wouldn't say more skilled, no. If anyone tells me players are more skillful than the likes of Martin Storey or Nicky English or DJ Carey, that any of them players out there today are as skillful as them, it beggars belief really with me. No, I wouldn't think so. To me, they're a lot more fitter today, and they have recovery sessions, and they're training 6 and 7 nights a week. The game has probably gone a good lot faster, but are they any more skillful than the players? No, the players back then, to me, were better than any of the players, I think, playing today.
One of the other things I just wanted to ask you about is just this, some of the talk this year was after the Limerick and Clare game about how Munster hurling was kind of on a pedestal, and how it was possibly the best game of the year and the best game for quite some time. It feels as if Kilkenny have got some sort of joy off knocking that narrative out of the water a little bit, that they've got every chance of winning this weekend, that a Leinster champion has every chance of winning this weekend.
Yeah, to me, a lot of the hurling that was played there in Munster over the last number of years is overhyped, and there's a load of codwattle, to tell you the truth, to tell you that Leinster hurling is way, way behind Munster hurling, and I don't believe any of that rubbish. There's a lot of former players out there from Clare and Limerick telling everyone this was the greatest Munster final of all time. I watched that game, and while intensity levels were high and the standard of hurling was good, but it certainly wasn't the greatest of all time. I thought both sets of defences that day were poor. Both teams put up big scores, like, and as I said, you have a lot of former players out there. Like, there was, in particular, one former player from Waterford telling everyone all year, especially us here in South Kilkenny, that this is the greatest Waterford panel of all time, and if and when they win All Ireland, that he'd ride a horse naked down the quay of Waterford, like, and it is maybe it is a donkey he should get, like, and you'd have a donkey on a donkey, because if that guy thinks like that you're going to win win All Irelands by playing the Munster ways, certainly that won't beat the teams in Leinster.
I get the sense that maybe teams who get ahead of themselves, who get a little bit carried away with their chances of winning an All Ireland, that's not very much the Kilkenny mentality.
No, the Kilkenny mentality has always been, you go out on a Sunday, you do your best, and I suppose it's a bit like what Limerick are doing, like, and to me Limerick have been very, very good champions, if not great champions, over the last number of years, but I don't think they've beaten any of the Leinster teams in an All-Ireland final. Last year, I would have to say Cork collapsed. I'd say the year before Waterford collapsed, but I don't see that happening with Kilkenny this Sunday, and I don't believe for a minute, as I said, that Munster hurling is way ahead of Leinster. Like, I think Kilkenny have every chance coming into Sunday's game, and while Limerick are favourites, they're favourites on what they've done in the past, and I don't think they're favourites on what they have done this year, because I'd say without doubt the best 35 minutes of hurling I saw this year was Kilkenny's first half performance in Clare. And if Kilkenny bring a 70-minute performance like that, Limerick won't beat them next Sunday.
How is Brian Cody kept going for so long? Like, that conversation we had a moment ago about how hurling has changed, and maybe you're saying that there's still so many basics that are so important. Do you think Brian Cody has actually allowed himself to change a little bit and allow new ideas to be formulated in his camp?
Yeah, I'd say, look, without a doubt, like I'd say, Brian has changed over the last 5 or 6 years. Like, Kilkenny didn't achieve much with the exception of winning 3 in a row in Leinster. I think they were beaten in the last 2 semi-finals. That is not really acceptable in Kilkenny. I think since 2016, Brian has changed, and what I liked more so this year than other years, I like the Kilkenny panel. I think they have huge strength on the sideline. When you look at Conor Delaney, there is a very good sub for the full back line. I think you have Conor Fogg there, Killian Buckley to come into the half back line, and when I go up front, I look at Walter Welsh, Richie Hogan, Richie Lahey. Most players, most of them players have gone any other team, and then throw in a young David Blanchfield there, and I think Brian has probably, maybe mellowed might be the wrong word, but I definitely think Brian has changed a bit in the last couple of years. Like, while he is still the same ruthless manager as ever, like, I do think he has probably mellowed maybe a small bit.
Do you remember the early years of Brian Cody? Do you wish you could have played under him a little bit?
Yeah, I certainly would. Like, I was lucky enough in Glenmore that I played full back for Glenmore, and one match in particular I came on full forward and Brian was full back for James Stevens, and he kind of done a bit of David and Goliath job on me one night above in Hugginstown, and I remember a couple of years later Brian was full forward for James Stevens, and I was after developing into a tough full back for Glenmore, and on this occasion I think I got the better of him. So I probably would have liked to have played under Brian. Whether I'd have lasted too long or not, I don't know, but I certainly I think Brian is what he is. Like, he's honest, he's fair, he's ruthless, he's tough, he's all the hallmarks of being the greatest manager of all time. But I think the one thing that sums up Brian is honesty, and anyone will tell you in Kilkenny that if you play well in training, you'll be on the team. Brian don't care about your club. Well, he does clearness in a sense that you play well with your club, but if you play well in training, you'll be on the team, and Brian gives everyone a chance, and I don't think any player can crib from the fact that if they're not on the team, it is not because they didn't get a fair chance, it's because they're not good enough.
Do you think you were a hard player to manage?
Yeah, I probably was. Compared to my brother Willie, I suppose, I was probably happy-go-lucky maybe, and often people compare myself and Willie, which we were two very, very different players. Willie was a much, much better hurler than me, so he was, and Willie probably trained a lot harder than I did. But if you if we were playing an All-Ireland final tomorrow morning and you wanted one of the two was to mark or Alan Gillan, I have no doubt Ollie Welsh should be asking me rather than Willie, because I was much better for tight marking, and I was much better for closing down people, and so like when I was playing cornerback, like as I said, I describe myself as a bit like Mikey Butler and Cathal Barrett. The best way of marking a great forward is to get out in front of him, anticipate the play and get out in front of him, and that was what I used to do, whether it was Eugene Cloonan or Tom Dempsey or any of them former great players. I used to often in matches gamble, and a lot of the times it worked for me, and but myself and Willie, we speak regularly, and I'm in contact with a good lot of former players, and for Willie to be captain in 2000, and as I said, when I was captain in 93, it was a wonderful achievement for both of us and a wonderful achievement for our family, and it is a moment we'll treasure until we die.
You obviously did your Laker Gale together a few years back, yourself and the brother. Would you say you're very close as brothers?
I wouldn't. Yeah, well, we would be close enough as brothers, and Willie's living in Mullavat as well. And as I said, we speak regularly and all that, and we, what we used to always do, when we were playing with Kilkenny, we used to meet up every Monday evening in the Glen Bar with Pat and Mickey Barn. They were the proprietors of the pub. Pat used to hurl with us below, and we used to have a sing-song every Monday evening, and Michael Field and Liam Welsh and the whole lot of us meet up. And I remember one good story a number of years later. Ollie Welsh said to us, he said, lads, I'm getting phone calls every Monday evening that the Glenmore lads are you belong to the Glen Bar and you're drunk again. And we said, yeah, Holly, we were. Well, he said, lads, keep hurling the way you are. He said, and I'm going to go drinking with you. And that's how close we were that time. And yeah, we would be still reasonably close, yeah.
Right, that's interesting, because I was just going to ask, we had Tommy Walsh on the show this week, who was talking about the pride he gets from one of his close friends or a brother winning an All-Ireland, and he thinks TJ would get similar pride on Sunday if his brother lifts Liam McCarthy. Did you see him as just another teammate, or did you see him as the most special teammate because he is literally your brother?
Sure, I always thought he was the most special teammate because, at the time we were living at home, and with a lot of mercy, my mother and father, and my mother died in 2000, the year that Willie was captain, and that was I suppose a poignant moment for us really, and any time if you thought you played bad, you could discuss it with one another, and we always had to help out one another, and especially with Glenmore, because I ended up full back with Glenmore for most of my career, and Willie ended up centre back, and while we were great friends in the club, we were still great friends with the county, and more often than not, with the club, the two of us, a lot of the heavy lifting was left to the two of us, and and any time we did have problems with players, often we'd switch, and Willie, if I was struggling on a night with a player, Willie'd pick him up, or if he was struggling, and yeah, it helped us tremendously, and I know where Tommy was coming from. I said, the greatest moment I had was 93 when All-Ireland, and certainly the second greatest moment was when Willie lifted a cup in 2000, and for two brothers in the one family to achieve that in a lifetime was I'd like to say a remarkable achievement.
Do you talk about it much now? Do you reminisce much as brothers?
Not really, no. We tend to often look back with fond memories, and I suppose people will tell you shouldn't be looking back, but we'd always look back and remember the times, and remember, at the time when we used to all travel together and train, and a good friend of ours, Pat O'Kelly, had a minibus, and Pat used to pick us up every evening, and we go up training, and after a lot of matches, maybe on the way back, we might go in for 1 or 2 pints, and we'd have a sing-song, and people often ask the question, Eddie, how good would yourself and Willie and Michael Field and them have been had you not be drinking? I'd say we'd probably have been superstars really, because at that time we were happy-go-lucky, and the highlight for us at the end of the week, or for the week, was the Monday Eve and the sing-song in the Glen Bar. That was the highlight for us, and it was we look back on that and we cherish it with probably some of the greatest memories we had.
So would you be doing the sing-songs on the Monday night in the Glen Bar the week of a championship game?
No, we used to skip a couple of weeks for the championship. Right. It was more so after the game rather than, you wouldn't rave with that in Kilkenny, so you wouldn't. No, it was after the games.
Do you think you underachieved? as a team then, if you're talking about that?
I'd say we did, yeah. We probably could have been better, but as I said, like, we have to give credit where credit is due. Like, some of the hurling there in the 80s and 90s, was I said, there were some wonderful teams out there that went on to win All Irelands, and you know, at the time we came up against a great Offaly team. We come up against a Wexford team that went along and won the 96 All Ireland. We Clare were emerging at the time. No, we won 2 All Irelands out of 3, like, and we have to be grateful for that. And it was a hell of an achievement at the time, like. But had we maybe stayed out of Glenbear, would we have won more? Certainly would have helped us to win more.
Yeah, but you probably have just as good memories now as a result of that. That team as a whole, are you close with them all? Like, I know you didn't do the Jubilee in 2018, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I didn't, but I kind of fell out with what would I say? I was the bad boy of Kilkenny hurling when I made a speech in '93, and you know, I probably didn't help things myself, but I certainly didn't get much support from Kilkenny. I always said when I was going up the steps of Croke Park, I'd like to think I'd make it good for the players coming after me. I always felt like that the players weren't appreciated by Croke Park or by some of the county boards, and what better place was it to say it than when I was accepting the McCarthy Cup. I'd like to think that I made it good for all the players that are going forward now. They're getting much better expenses, they're getting much better medical assessments, and they're getting much better as regards the majority of them have company cars and all that. And while a lot of people said I caused trouble or I advocated professionalism, I never did. I never wanted to see hurling go professional. I don't think the GAA could stand that, but I do feel like that the players should be rewarded a lot more. And you know, certainly going forward, I'd like to see the winners of the Football All Ireland, maybe the winners of the Hurling All Ireland, getting say 20,000 a man in vouchers, and I'd like to see the runners up getting 15,000, and maybe the Munster finalists 10,000. The Leinster, to me, you know what I mean, the longer you go on the year, the more strain is putting on the body, the longer hours you're doing, there's a better chance you have of getting injured and all that. So I do think there should be a system there where you reward success and all that. And while I'm not advocating or anything that way, like for professionalism, I do think there's still plenty of room for improvement.
You on the steps of the Hogan stand, asked for a holiday fund for players. Basically, that was the gist of it. Well, what was the backlash like at that point?
Sure, like the backlash from all the players was a pat on the back, and from anyone involved in county panels, a pat on the back. But certainly the backlash from the Kilkenny County Board was dismal. I was treated very, very badly.
Like, what did they do, or what did they say?
I remember coming home on the train that night or the following evening, and I was said to me by one official, they said, Eddie, you're a dead man walking, and you better, you know what I mean, that your place will be in jeopardy next year, he said, over what you said there today. And because a lot of the people in the county board could see no evil, hear no evil, or smell no evil, but I didn't care. I often said to people after me, if I'm the best cornerback, I said, in Kilkenny, you don't have the balls to drop me. And they wasn't, you know what I mean, they backtracked a bit on it. And I remember a couple of years later, I got involved in an incident with my club, Glenmore, with a referee, and I got suspended for 6 months, and 5 of the months were for the speech I made in Croke Park.
Yes, Owen chatting with former Kilkenny captain Eddie O'Connor there. It was the Glenbear that got in the way of them winning more, Owen.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, it's a really interesting period of time, isn't it? That early 90s and the sort of revolution years in hurling. I guess we were talking to Tom Ryan the other day about Limerick coming so close around that period of time. What we usually hear are the glory tales of Offaly and Wexford and Clare in particular. Not seeing Kilkenny and Tip and Cork dominating that period was probably really interesting when we look back. Obviously, Limerick are having their glory days right now. So maybe the Glenbear was the thing that stopped it all. Maybe that just could have been another Kilkenny golden era had it not been for that place on a Monday night. But it's really interesting listening to Eddie talk there. He did have to do, and to pull back the curtain here, he did have to do the interview twice. My fault. This has never happened to me, Aisling. I'm not sure if it's happened to you, but where an interview just doesn't record. Yesterday was the first time where it happened. Now, I was convinced that I'd clicked record, but when I went back to check the phone, screen was blank and there was nothing there, and I was like, oh my God. So he is such a gentleman that he did it again. And when I sat back into the car afterwards, I looked at my phone and I had 2 interviews with Eddie O'Connor. I don't know what had happened to the
So
first
it did
one or
record the
what
first time?
It did record, so I've got 2 different interviews, but it's great, you could choose the best from the 2 of them
Yes,
and
you
play it
can.
out as opposed to... So we got a second take at it as we sat on this car there with the handbrake on. So that's Eddie O'Connor. Really, it's really interesting because when you listen to him talk there, you might say that he maybe has some traditional values, but really what he's kind of very well remembered for as a Kilkenny captain is trying to usher in a new era in the attitude towards GAA players, where he calls for a holiday fund on the steps of the Hogan stand. He uses his speech in '93 as captain to call for county boards to stump up the cash for players to go on a holiday for winning teams of the All-Ireland. And that's common practice now,
Yeah.
the Tailteann Cup team getting 60 grand last week towards their holiday fund. It's interesting to hear that in 1993 he was a bit of a pariah in the view of his own county board for stepping out of line on that front.
And
so
did things change then?
I'm not quite sure, actually. I'm not sure when it changed, but certainly within the following 10 years things were very different. But it's just kind of it's always interesting that we can sometimes we can tar a traditionalist with the one brush very quickly and suggest that such and such a person wouldn't be into new ideas, or they'd be very against professionalism or moving towards modernity. And he definitely wasn't one of those people. He's a complicated man. His brother Willie obviously captained Kilkenny to All-Ireland glory as well 7 years later. I actually did miss the Lakewood Gale when it happened. I'd love to watch it back, because I was reading up on him and I'd love to see the 2 of them together. Willie was unfortunately abroad this week, so we couldn't chat to them together, but Eddie more than made up for it by coming to meet me for a chat.
Oh yeah, it's a fascinating story and great to hear from him. Right, it's All-Ireland Hurling final week, as we know, and we've got 4 priceless tickets to give away on the show this week. It's all with thanks to Bord Gáis Energy. 2022 marks the 6th year of Bord Gáis Energy's championship sponsorship of the All-Ireland Hurling Senior Championship. To celebrate every day this week, we're giving away €150 one-for-all vouchers, and more importantly, each winner will go into Friday's draw for an incredible grand prize of €1,500 one-for-all voucher and 4 tickets to Sunday's All-Ireland final between Limerick and Kilkenny. To enter, tune into tonight's show. It's all with thanks to Bord Gáis Energy, and you can search #GiftOfTheGab for more. But now it's time for the Quick Picks.
Some of these critics, these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
I'd like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just miss you like you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Yes, we have an All-Ireland Hurling final special. Will O'Callaghan, how's it going?
Morning folks, how you getting on?
Good now. And Owen, we're going to bring up the picks just now. I think you've had a last minute change. Owen, not from this graphic, but take it. Dramatic. Tell us, Owen, what happened?
I've just been swept away on a Kilkenny wave here. I've just been the sort of the Yara is obviously something that speaks to me, and I understand where they're coming from. I understand the sages when they kind of pull up their hood and they say, sure, we don't have a chance someday. I understand what that means. I speak their language, and I know that means that they have a hell of a chance this Sunday, and they persuaded me with that logic. They've kind of blown me away here with that, and I think Kilkenny are going to dethrone Limerick. I've just woken up this morning and had that realisation. Also, my picks over the last couple of weeks have been absolutely appalling. I'm on an absolutely astonishingly bad run, so I need to mix things up in some way.
Well, last week was absolutely shocking for me. I went all out thinking that Derry were going to do the business, and yeah, we seen what happened. But Owen, so you've been in Limerick, you've been in Kilkenny, so you're feeling something a little bit different in Kilkenny then?
Well, I also think that there's a feeling in Limerick of nerves towards Kilkenny. Now, of course, that's just from the people you're meeting on the street. It's not from the team themselves. But I think a few people are still a little bit shook about what happened in 2019. Now, the reality may be that come Sunday, 2019 will be either A, non-factor, or B, something that Limerick uses huge motivation in order to try and get revenge against Kilkenny. But there's definitely this sense that if some team is going to beat this Limerick team, it's going to be Brian Cody. And I just wondered, do we sometimes underappreciate just how much Cody how petty Cody is, and I mean that in a positive way, and how much he will be looking at the fact that Limerick are going for 3 in a row. 3 in a row is a bloody hard thing to do. 2 is tough, but 3 is really, really difficult. And Cody knows that more than anybody else, that maybe they don't get enough credit for actually doing their 3 in a row. And, you know, he would have experienced it twice in the last decade as well, where they got 2 and they couldn't get to 3. And just that sense of Limerick stomping over the Kilkenny team of the 2000s, or at least being compared to them. I just think that Cody thinks about that sort of stuff and is pretty wound up. And this year really went after this Limerick team. And I'd say has been dying to get another crack off him since 2019 as well. So I don't know. I think there's enough to hang your hat on to make a reasonable case that Kilkenny can do it this weekend. And I think that after the Clare performance, it would be strange to suggest that Limerick are a dominant team and are going to blow Kilkenny out of the water, especially if you bring into proceedings the fact that Cian Lynch could be missing.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not confident with Limerick, I have to say. I went back and forth, and when Colin rang me yesterday, I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to go with Limerick, and then just in the last second I did. But it was a tough call to make, but I would not be surprised, as you said, Brian Cody coming up against Limerick 3 in a row, as you said, is a tough thing to do. So I would not be surprised if Kilkenny get over the line, but I'm sticking by Limerick for the moment anyway. Will, tell us why you've gone with Limerick.
Yeah, well, look, 3 in a row has never been completed by a Limerick team until now. They're kind of chasing their great team of the 1930s currently, where potentially they could do 4 in 5 years, which is even more impressive than doing 3 in a row. Kilkenny, last team to do 3 in a row back in 2008 on the run where they almost went 5 in a row, were beaten by Tipperary eventually in that classic final. But look, I think you'd have to have some concerns from a Limerick perspective, just due to the fact that they're without a 2-time hurler of the year most likely this weekend in Cian Lynch. Everyone is trying to work out exactly when he picked up the knock and how long he could potentially be out for, because there's a lot of talk and rumours about 10 days, and that may have happened at training on Tuesday, so then it's very unlikely he's going to be back in time for the final. I think Nash has had a knock this week but is expected to play. Not ideal though. One of your best players in defence could potentially have a niggle going into the game, and I think Aaron Gillan was recovering over the last week or so as well. It's the quick turnaround of the 2 weeks that probably doesn't help. Limerick would have probably preferred if it was the old system where they had a little bit of extra time to even get more time into Peter Casey's legs, where Cian Lynch would have had adequate recovery time after this knock to come back for the final. But like Limerick have had to do all year, they just have to kind of go with the flow and deal with the issues that they've had. I think the one advantage, if you're Limerick, about the Cian Lynch situation is that it's not been a case of Cian Lynch has been pulling the strings for them all season and has been in remarkable form and absolutely key to the way that they play. And now he's picked up an injury on the eve of the All-Ireland final. The reality is that since the second round of Munster, they've been without Cian Lynch, with the exception of a few minutes off the bench in the semi-final, when he didn't look 100% back to full fitness anyway. So they've been able to get game time all year into Colonel, and he's been playing remarkably well. And you've got a team who are just so good at being able to adapt positionally and personnel-wise around games too. And tactically, Limerick are able to switch it up a bit, and still players come in and the machine just keeps on rolling. So if any team was to lose a 2-time hurler of the year, Limerick are probably best placed to be without Cian Lynch this weekend, because we already had question marks if Cian Lynch was coming back into the team about where Kyle Hayes was potentially going to play. Was Graham Mulcahy going to have to drop out of the team? If it means that they just have to go with the 15 that they did in the All-Ireland semi-final victory against Galway and rely on the fact that maybe Casey can come off the bench and that David Reedy can have another meaningful contribution, I think John Kiley would have taken that start of the season. As you know, it's not exactly optimum to be without Cian Lynch, clearly, but Limerick have possibly been blessed by the fact that they've been able to try other players out in positions and to get game time into O'Neill during the season. So I think from that point of view, Limerick won't be overly concerned, and that's one of the reasons that I'm tipping Limerick to win. I think they will find solutions to the problems that are placed before them when it comes to throwing at 3:30 on Sunday. And we're all talking about this Kilkenny ambush, and I take the point that, you know, they hurled with remarkable intensity in the semi-final against Clare. You have to offset that against how poorly Clare played though, and also the way that Kilkenny came out firing with a blitzkrieg of an attack in the 2019 semi-final. I'm not sure really how much relevance 2019 holds though, because of how much the teams have evolved since. I think Limerick are a far better team than they were in 2019. I think there's no way that Limerick get caught in the way that they did by Kilkenny. They know exactly what's coming for them this Sunday. So I think that element of surprise might well be gone. But this Kilkenny team are obviously very good at spoiling it for opposition, and that's going to be the strength that they look at. It would be remarkable if they were to win this 12th of the Cody era, having already lost 2 championship games this year. But Kilkenny appear to be at a better place now than they were at any other stage of the championship this season.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with Kilkenny. They seem to be getting better game on game. They're constantly improving. Owen, is it the Clare game that really swung it for you, that you seen Kilkenny in action, or is it that you're in Kilkenny and they're all swaying you?
Yeah, no, there's somebody with a gun pointing at my head right now at the other side of this phone. Will does make a good point there at the end of the day. Just seem to have timed this run to the final perfectly. So yeah, of course, the Clare semi-final is the key point and all of that. Like, it'd be interesting. Like, I mean, if Clare had actually more accuracy that day, Kilkenny could have conceded quite an amount. And I mean, the situation with Limerick then is that you add their firepower onto proceedings, and you could say that Kilkenny's defence, as teak tough as it looked at times last time out, that there is actually kind of a few holes or a few opportunities for teams to get on top of them. But I don't know, I just think that these individual performances that we've seen from Kilkenny are kind of going in one direction. You've also got the hallmarks of a team that have done it in the past, and it may just be, you know, the image of Richie Hogan, who'll probably come off the bench at some point, maybe will come off the bench at some point, which is the sort of thing that you're hanging your hat on with regards to this being the old Kilkenny. And Will is right, like 2019 is a long time ago, but you could maybe ask, why did the 2019 performance happen? And maybe it's down to the intensity of a Brian Cody team. It's Kilkenny in Croke Park, and this year they look very good in Croke Park. Those couple of things will still be the case this weekend, and a team just unbelievably high on confidence after what they did to Clare. So I'm by no stretch making the extension here that because Clare drew with Limerick and Kilkenny hockeyed Clare, that Kilkenny will beat Limerick. That's not my logic whatsoever. It's different to that. It's just about I'm almost just getting swept away in the mystique around Kilkenny, and I just have a hunch that they're going to do the job this weekend.
Yeah, and I feel that Clare didn't turn up whatsoever against Kilkenny. It was almost a different team altogether. I heard Tony Kelly speaking about it during the week as well. So I definitely don't think we could go off that. But you just can't ever write Kilkenny off. And we spoke with Brian Cody there, 24 years now, Will. Would this be the biggest achievement of his if he could go the whole way?
Yeah. I really felt if they'd won in 2019, it would have been his best All-Ireland, coming back after 4 years of not winning and transitioning a new team after some of the best players of all time had finished up after the 2015 victory. Now, even going an extra 3 years onto that, it would be even more impressive when you consider he's brought 3 or 4 players into the team this year, and the way that they've evolved. Like, I even think back to the league where Blanchfield was one of the best players that Kilkenny had in the league, and yet he hasn't seen game time in Championship. We talk about Richie Hogan, who's got no game time this year whatsoever. I wonder how much involvement Richie Hogan is going to have this weekend. We'll obviously get the match day 26 because Kilkenny tend to name their 15 and the subs at around 9 o'clock on a Friday ahead of a big game. If Richie Hogan is involved this time, does he get sprung from the bench? Because they kept him in reserve for the semi-final victory against Clare. To do it, you know, with an ageing TJ Reid he's going to be 35 later this year, albeit he hurled remarkably well against Clare. Again, maybe he's timing his performances because TJ wasn't having the best of championships. Remember, he got the hook back in Salt Hill when they were playing against Galway, didn't play well that day, had a few understated performances since, and then, you know, very much came to the fore and scored 10 points the last day, and everything that TJ hit seemed to go over. His frees were almost perfect in the semi-final against Clare. Adrian Mullen put in his best performance of the year. Owen Cody looked back to good form. Mikey Butler did a remarkable job, and Tony Kelly. Can Mikey Butler do exactly the same on Aaron Gillan this coming Sunday? If he does, that gives Kilkenny a serious chance, because you talk about the motivation of 2019. One of the things that motivated the players back in 2019, Paul Murphy has told us this on the Hurling pod this week, was that Limerick were talking a lot of smack going into that semi-final in 2019, and it was something that Kilkenny had actually talked about afterwards. And even the aforementioned TJ Reid had been particularly inspired by, I think it was an interview by Seamus Flanagan, who was talking about the fact that Limerick were talking about outworking every single team in the country, and then that was huge motivation for Kilkenny, a Kilkenny team who, you know, had such an inspirational record in the previous 10 years before that. It was like, right, these new boys are trying to come and take our crown, and they went out and hurled with just remarkable hunger and intensity that day in 2019. It will take a similar type of performance, but Kilkenny cannot afford, like Clare, who were under strength and underperformed the last day, still had 26 scoring chances which they left behind them. Given how good Limerick are at shooting from distance and at, you know, chance creation during games, they cannot afford to be that loose defensively, even if Mikey Butler does a really good job on Aaron Gillan. If they cough up that many chances for Limerick, Limerick will definitely win this final. So Kilkenny have got tightening up to do on their semi-final as well. Although, I have to say, and I've said a few times on Quick Picks on OTBAM this year, I wasn't so sure about the way that Kilkenny were distributing the ball from an attacking point of view earlier in the season. they seem to have got that right now. There is more of a mix. They're willing to run the ball through the lines. They got better ball into their forward line in both the Leinster final and in the All-Ireland semi-final. So that's trending in the right direction if you're Kilkenny. Albeit, you have to come up against a Limerick defence who've got 6 All-Stars across their 6 starting backs and their goalkeeper, Nicky Quaid, as well. So it's going to be a very difficult nut for them to crack at the weekend, albeit they have probably the hurler of his generation in TJ Reid to help them do so.
Yes, that is for sure. And I think the underdogs tag as well is an aspect that Kilkenny will just relish, as I said earlier in the show. So I'd be scared to see them at the weekend now coming in with that underdog tag. But we're going to have a look at the leaderboard before we go. 1%. That was because of last weekend. I had a shocking weekend. Last week I called it all wrong and Tommy got, I think, every single one right, didn't he?
He was the only one to go for Galway, I think, yeah. The rest of us were pretty much Derry across the board, as I recall.
Okay, wow. And how many games do we have left? Is it just the last 2 games? Oh, God. Need to catch
this
him.
In the football final, yeah. This is where we should have introduced the points difference at this stage. I think if Adrian Barry was around and not on his Holliers at the moment, he would definitely be making a case that we should have had a margin for victory and points based on that to try and keep this close going into the last weekend. Because we've all gone, obviously, except for Owen, have gone for Limerick this weekend. So in all likelihood, this is pretty much done and dusted. It's all going to come down on the football final, isn't it?
It is, yes. So we'll have to see where we're all going to go. You never know, Owen, you could jump right up now that you've been the only one to go for Kilkenny.
As long as Kilkenny and Galway win these next 2 weeks, I'll be happy.
There you go.
I'd say. Well, that was the GAA Quick Picks. Thanks a lot, lads.
Cheers, Ash.
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
Yes, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And here's what we've got on OTB Sports Radio today. At 1 p.m, we've OTB Gold, the life and times of Johnny Kilban. 3 p.m, we have live Friday night racing. 4 p.m, the Koi Gig Euro special. 6 p.m, OTB Gold, Joe meets Ger Loughnane. You can follow Off the Ball across all our social channels. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and be sure to download the OTB Sports app for the latest in the best sports content and analysis. We'll see you after this break.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Don't miss a moment of Ireland's tour of New Zealand.
What's wrong with saying you're going to go down there with 2 10s that aren't Johnny Sexton and still have an expectation that if you perform properly, you have a chance of winning? I don't think there's a fear thing, or there should be a fear thing that you get a beating. If the beating happens, the beating happens. We just have to deal with that.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. Because somewhere out there, there's someone for you. And GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Yes, you're very welcome back. Owen, we're going to go back to some of the content that you've been getting over the last 2 days. How have you enjoyed the last 2 days? I know you do it each and every year, so it must be a part of the year you look forward to.
It's great. It's great to see kind of all the excitement around the different places, and like getting a little bit of variation this year as well. That it's not Limerick and Cork like last year. Obviously, Limerick trying to kind of dig a little bit deeper this year when the excitement seems to be at a fairly similar level is a little bit challenging. But Kilkenny, it was good to see how Kilkenny people build up to an All-Ireland, because they're well used to it. And even though it's been a little while since they've been in an All-Ireland final, it definitely feels that they're still kind of the aristocrats, and that, you know, there's still more hype and still more novelty about the whole thing in Limerick. I think that's fair to say. Now, in fairness, we did literally bring like Kilkenny Elvis to you earlier on, and this entire place is like the most intense looking place that a GAA fan ever has. So there are exceptions to that rule, but by and large, it is more chilled out in Kilkenny, I would say. Now, what was interesting, like we'll go back to Limerick again a little bit later on, but just to conclude on Kilkenny, I met the great Ballycallan chairman yesterday, Dave O'Neill is his name. We had a chat. So obviously he is the chairman of a hurling club in Kilkenny, but he comes from Limerick. So he's in a pretty interesting position this weekend. Here's how our conversation went.
Greg Ballycallan, I suppose, is where I'm domiciled at the moment. Dave O'Neill here. I'm chairman. It's an honour to be chairman of the Greg Ballycallan GAA Club. And I suppose I'm originally from a lovely little place in County Limerick called Kilteely-Drumkeen.
Right, so this has been a pretty interesting week for you, I'd imagine.
It has. It has. I mean, I suppose over the last few years, from 2014 really, I suppose, with minors, 21s, we had Billy Ryan playing in the minor final in 14. Eddie Brennan was managing the under-21 team in 17. And I suppose, you know, from there, 19 and now. So yeah, it's good fun. It's good. It's banter. It's good crack.
When did you leave Limerick for Kilkenny?
I was ran out of it in 1986. I'm gone almost 36 years now, and they've never asked me back. So, and now I've been Ballycallan, or in Greg Ballycallan since. I'm Greg Ballycallan now 30 years, right. And they're trying to get rid of me in most of those 30 years. So right. I'm not really wanted anywhere.
This week, obviously, I presume as a chairman of a club, you've got a big responsibility to make sure that the Kilkenny people get the tickets and make sure that they're well supported. I mean, surely you're going to sort out some of your Limerick brethren?
No, on this occasion, I've had to do in the past, I suppose. I have a lot of contacts, but I suppose in 18 and for the last few years. But no, this year it's Kilkenny only. But no, it's wonderful. I mean, you know, it's hard to believe, I suppose. I think is it 17 times in Brian Cody's era of, what's it, 22 or 3 years, or 24 years now. It's Kilkenny are in a final. And it's the same buzz. I mean, it was palpable on the Sunday after the semi-final. We had a game in the club and all the stewards were there and we were all talking, and you just can sense the excitement, and it doesn't matter what age people are. It's an all-Ireland final. It's a very special time and it never grows old.
Who do you cheer for?
I suppose I'm a Limerick man. I was born and bred and I will die a Limerick man, but I'm heavily invested in Kilkenny GAA as well, so I'll be quiet. I'll be quiet on Sunday. Yeah. You know, it's an unusual experience. But GAA's, you know, my love of the GAA was fostered in Kilteely-Drumkeen, and it's only been enhanced since I moved. I consider myself very fortunate to live in Greg Ballycallan, so it's an occasion where I'll stay quiet on Sunday. But I'm looking forward to it. I think of all the All-Irelands, you know, in a world gone mad at the moment. I think this could be a very special All-Ireland. There'll be a lot of history. I saw the weather forecast last night. In Kilkenny, people still talk about the thunder and lightning All-Ireland from 1939. Maybe this one will be the sunburnt All-Ireland. Yeah. Because, but there's more than that. I suppose Limerick have an opportunity to do what's only been done 5 times in the last 100 years. And that's to win 3 in a row. And I suppose the common denominator number is 3, because if Kilkenny do it, they'll be winning number 37. So I think this one will be memorable. I'm certain that this will be a memorable All-Ireland. Something told me last Christmas when I realised I was going to miss out that it would be a Kilkenny-Limerick final. And I told all my Kilkenny friends, and now I'm reminding them of that. And I don't think any of them said, no, we won't make it, we won't get that. But that's Kilkenny. Yeah. Kilkenny's expectations to start of the year is, let's see what happens. You know, there's never claims and you're having a drink over Christmas. No one stands up in the pub or stands up in a home or wherever you are and says, you know what, we'll win the All-Ireland next year. They keep it very, very low key. So, you know, I'm reminding them, by the way, for the last week that most of them should be ashamed attending Croke Park because they were saying Kilkenny wouldn't get to the final. My own personal opinion is I think the stars are aligned for a Kilkenny victory. Right. Genuinely, I do.
Be kept on as chairman for another year?
Well, oh God, no, they're trying to get rid of me every year. I probably won't be invited to any family functions in Limerick going forward.
That was a good way to end it. The Dave O'Neill, chairman of Greg Ballycallan. You managed to find a Limerick man that lives in Kilkenny, chairman of a club there. That must be tough for him at the minute.
Yeah, maybe that's why I'm calling Kilkenny, is because he just said it and he seemed pretty convincing and he said Kilkenny are going to win it. So I was like, yeah, that guy seems to know what he's talking about. Let's go with that.
Well, you met a lot of characters along the way, and you also met a member of the Cranberries.
Yeah, so yesterday before we headed off from Limerick, just had a quick chat with Noel Hogan, who was a founding member, obviously, of the Cranberries, who have obviously become synonymous with this Limerick team, certainly in the 2018 season, and they haven't been disconnected since. So if Limerick win at the weekend, there's only going to be one band you're going to hear playing through the speakers at Croke Park, and a member of that band is Noel Hogan, who I caught up with yesterday. Okay, we are back in Limerick city centre. Delighted to say Noel Hogan has got up out of bed early. You're one of the AM warriors as well to meet me. Noel, this is an interesting week for you, where you may not have a whole pile of interest in hurling in general, but you could get quite rich this weekend if things go your way.
Yeah, I'd like to think that that song is bringing some good luck to Limerick, as ever since they started using it as their kind of anthem, they've done quite well from it. So, yeah, it's amazing. It's great.
2018, I'd say, was an interesting year from your perspective because, as I say, maybe you wouldn't have paid a whole pile of attention to hurling, but you could not have ignored what was happening in terms of the connection between your song and that Limerick hurling team when they blew up.
Yeah, I remember the day very well because I was actually going on holidays the same day, and when I landed, my phone, I turned back on my phone, suddenly it was like ping, 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 and it was like friends of mine who were at the match or friends who were watching it on TV were all sending me these videos, and it was the first time kind of we were aware of, you know, oh my God, they're using the song so much. And even the following few weeks, and really ever since, the Dreams has become kind of synonymous with the Limerick hurling team. So yeah, it was very interesting, considering the four of us within the band were never really the most sporty people in the world.
How does that make you feel when that starts to happen then in 2018 and those messages start to roll in?
Look, you know what? It does fill you with a bit of pride that people from your hometown, like the Limerick team, did so well, and then we're from here as well. So it's nice that there's a connection there. So yeah, it is. It's really cool.
That pride of place is an interesting one. It doesn't necessarily have to be connected to sport, but as people from Limerick, how proud does it make you feel that there is positive things happening on a historic level, that this sports team actually could go down as one of the greatest of all time?
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Anything positive for any city is it's a good thing. And I guess the fact that we all grew up here, we've always stayed here. I know we've come and gone because of work and things like that, but we've based ourselves here. And for all its faults, there's so many great things here as well, and it's great that those things are being kind of pointed out more as well. And especially now we all have kids and they're growing up here as well. It's nice to see this kind of positive side of it.
That's interesting, like the idea that you spent your whole life here essentially when you think about where you've lived. How has this place changed, or what's the biggest thing that's changed over the last couple of decades?
I mean, God, it's a different city to what I grew up predominantly in the 80s. I would have been here a lot in Limerick, and it was grim enough, to be honest. It's a great place to grow up, but it was a kind of a dull enough place at that time. Whereas now, even standing here today, you see all this work going on around us, and it's constantly improving and working on itself, which is, it's great. And that's one of the reasons we never moved from here, because you could see that bit by bit there were improvements happening.
You had a sense of hope then, when maybe it wasn't easy to...
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because we never even really considered, with all the success, it was kind of, let's move to LA or New York or, this kind of thing. It was always like, the minute, when we finish this tour, okay, let's just go home. We were like on a plane and landing in Sheahan. And nobody ever really kind of gave it a second thought. So, subconsciously, it was always in there, this was home.
Right, that's interesting. And was there the temptation ever real at all to move to an LA or to a London or something like that? Was it genuinely just because home had such a pull for all of you?
Yeah, I think so. Like we were very lucky. All our families are here, obviously, and then you have. But we still all hang around with the friends we grew up with, So I always felt if I moved somewhere else, I'm not going to know anybody. I'm not going to, it's a different world for me. And that's why I guess we considered our time off was really being at home. A lot of people go my time off and go on holidays, whereas we spent so much time traveling that to come back was the break from it, and to be able to just go out and people here, never really cared what it was. With all the success, it was like, yeah, that's just what you do and that's that thing. So you were kind of left alone here.
What's your favourite thing about Limerick?
I guess it's friends and family, that are here, and it's kind of that's the weird thing. I guess the last few years with COVID, that you were kind of very much isolated from all those from that world, and it's nice to be kind of able to go back out again or ring someone and go, will we meet for a drink? And so it's great. I mean, Limerick's weird in that it's a city, but it's small enough that it's like a community. Like you walk down the street and you see they kind of know everybody, kind of thing. They know you, and it's really nice that way.
Is that really kind of the nub of the whole thing then, that when your stars were rising, that actually there was always a humility here? It was always a sense of home that would not keep you grounded, but that would just kind of bring you the sense of normality when maybe your careers were anything but normal.
Yeah, I guess, again, I think it's something that you don't overthink. Sure. It's kind of, for the first few years we all lived at home with our parents still, and we'd be off living the kind of high life, and then you come home and you'd still, what time do you call this coming in, It was like, the normal kind of side of life was still there very much, and especially, like a real Irish thing with your friends, if you started coming home, with leather pants and capes, and you kind of think you'd be soon put in your place. So it was great like that it just kind of, I think it kept us all very grounded through all of it, and you'd like to think we turned out pretty normal because of it at the end of it all.
Do you think that there's also been not a renaissance in your music, but maybe kind of an extra spike in people who've come to have a relationship with your music in the aftermath of Dolores' passing, as well as the success of the Limerick hurling team over the last few years?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're so lucky. Like, Dreams is a perfect example. It's one of the first songs we ever wrote, and you're really looking at just over 30 years ago, and normally you think that has a lifespan of maybe 10 years, and then a decade moves on and people move on another generation. But I found that ever since Dolores passed away and stuff like the Limerick hurling team winning then, that the music, I'm probably hearing it more now on radio than I did in the kind of 20 years before that. And for us, it's amazing. We can't understand it, because you do this stuff and you move on to the next album, the next song, and you kind of almost forget about it in some ways. It's always there, but it's it's there, but it just like I've got two kids in their 20s, and they're out and they'll send me videos. They could be anywhere in the world, and they're in a club or somewhere, and like Zombie or Dreams are being played, and you're kind of going, that's so weird for us, because we thought, there's so much, like, music changes, it goes in cycles, and you think they've moved on to the next thing. So I don't know why or how it's managed to live. You'd like to think it's because they're good songs, but it's it's great that there is that legacy there, I think, as well. It's something Dolores would be delighted with. Yeah,
it's kind of like Kate Bush and her Renaissance this summer as well. Like, so do you remember the writing of that song?
I do. It was it was around the same time as Linger. They were in the first kind of batch of songs, of ideas, and it would have been on one of the early demos that we ever did. And I actually found that demo a couple of years ago. I think the only one left, and it's more or less the same song, badly recorded, but we just wrote in the beginning, and we had all this bunch of songs, and Linger and Dreams really stood out. They just had something that the others didn't at the time, and we were kind of proven right. You get that feeling that this one's better than all the rest, and I can still remember, just kind of being in my bedroom at home, kind of going, oh yeah, that's nice, that's something, and then you develop it, and then Dolores put her vocal on it, and it turns into something else again. And then it gets to the point, like particularly with Dreams, I found I used to you do it at a gig and you'd be on autopilot, because we had it so long, and you kind of, it's just another song. But it has taken on, I think, even lyrically, listening to it now, and I think she was only 18 when she wrote those lyrics, and you think, how can an 18-year-old do that? You don't realise it at the time, because you think you know everything at that age. And it's only, I guess, even for me, I have a new appreciation for it now that I didn't have for a very long time.
like an appreciation for the fact that an 18-year-old did write those words as well. So, like, how much does that speak to the character that she was, especially so young, and to be able to do that so young?
Yeah, I mean, it shows, doesn't it, really, kind of a depth and an intelligence there that you just take for granted. It's like all of us with all of our friends, you just kind of, hey, there's Dolores, or there's John, or there's Mickey, you know, kind of thing. It's kind of, it's when these people are gone, I think you kind of appreciate them more. You kind of just start to remember all the stuff that you kind of, you know, we all take for granted. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing when I think of it now. But like I said, I mean, we couldn't be told anything at the time. We knew, in our minds, we knew everything.
It's that very Irish thing of possibly not saying positive things to one's face and then being glowing after their departure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if anything, but you know what? It's the nice thing, I guess, about the Irish thing is that, you know, you kind of say things, you say pretty harsh things to each other, but in a joking way. But there is a love in there as well under that, and we all know. I mean, I remember one of the first trips to America we did, and, you know, the Americans would be with us in whatever capacity, and we'd all be slagging each other so much. And one girl had said to us one night, "Why do you all stay together? You hate each other so much." It's just like, that's just the way we speak to each other. Yeah,
people would be shocked if they came to Ireland and actually saw what was going on. So this Sunday then, if Limerick win, what will happen to your Spotify streams and all your other music side streams? Will there be a genuine spike?
Yeah, I looked the first 2 years. I just went onto iTunes just to see did it make a difference, and there it is. Dreams. I think it runs into the top 10 for like 24 hours and then kind of drops back out again. But it's amazing how it just comes back to life every year. And I get a like, speaking of, you know, being abused by your friends, I get a lot of slagging over it. Kind of, well, your payday is coming this year again now. You know? So yeah, it's amazing. And then I guess the fact that it spans so many age groups, from young kids to people my own age, people older. I mean, you kind of have to pinch yourself sometimes to think that you're part of that's something you did.
It's a pretty amazing legacy, Noel. Good luck on Sunday. Hopefully you do get that spike. With modern streaming services, what's that, 2 pints maybe or something like that?
I'll be at home myself, just kind of re-listening to it over and over, yeah.
Noel Hogan, thanks very much. Appreciate your time.
Cheers, thanks.
Yes, the legendary Noel Hogan from the Cranberries. A brilliant interview to get. How did you manage that one, Owen?
I just messaged him on Instagram and he was around.
Fairly straightforward.
Fairly straightforward, yeah. He just met up for before we went on OTB AM yesterday morning, actually, bright and early on O'Connell Street in Limerick. So yeah, it is interesting. Like, I'm always fascinated by those people who are kind of like affected by sport, even though they've got very little interest in sport, and how the Cranberries have. So certainly from my memory, like I know it's still very strong, but certainly the summer of 2018, it very much felt that connection was kind of like forever made. And I know, like, it wasn't long after Dolores Reardon's passing, so maybe that was one of the reasons for it. It just felt very emotional, and it felt very connected to Cranberries and Limerick GAA, and most of the band really have no interest in hurling, but I guess they're interested now when Limerick potentially win on Sunday, and there's a potential spike in their figures coming.
Yeah, and their payday comes in, as Noel said.
Yeah, the good old Spotify payday. Absolutely.
And you were speaking as well to Steve Gleeson?
Sorry, yeah. So Steve Gleeson is the co-owner of a sports shop in Limerick called Gleeson Sports Scene, and it's just one of those independent-run sports shops that I think every town has. It's been run from generation to generation. It's been there for decades in Limerick city centre. So we got chatting about the game this weekend, and also about the hurling boom that the city has experienced over the last 5 years.
Well, my father founded it in about 1975. I was a young fella still going to school at the time. His background was he had a newsagent shop here in Limerick, but he also refereed the 1957 All-Ireland final between Kilkenny and Waterford. So we weren't around then, but he's spoke to us many times about it and how big a game it was and what a big part of his life it was. And the funny thing about that game was there was actually a film made during it, a film called Rooney. So there was actually 16 men walked out instead of 15 with the Waterford team, I think. I stand to be corrected on that. So there was a pub trivia for you.
Right. So your father is in the movie Rooney?
He's in the movie Rooney, yeah.
Very good. What's interesting is that over the last few decades in the city, we've seen so many great teams come up through the ranks, not just in hurling but in other great sports. Obviously you've got great soccer teams, and you've got the great rugby team in Munster Rugby. How have you seen the sporting landscape change to reflect that in this shop down through the years?
Well, I suppose the good thing with Limerick, and every person in Limerick will tell you this, that people transcend sports. So the guys that support hurling, a lot of them support soccer, support rugby, and vice versa. You'll see rugby and soccer people in Croke Park as well as hurling people. But the hurling, since the success of the senior team in 2018, hurling sales have gone through the roof. Slitter sales have gone through the roof, which shows on the ground how popular it has made it. And yes, it has hit the other sports, definitely. Hurling in Limerick is definitely on the cusp of a wave here, and there's again thousands of young people playing it, which is great.
In terms of sports equipment, is a hurley your number one sale here, or is it still, does it still have a bit of work to do to knock off some other sports?
No, the hurling will be our number one.
So after 2018, you just noticed an uptick in sales for the sport?
Yes, listen, hurling would always be big in Limerick, but it just went massive. I guess any kids that were coming up that were on a 50-50 between rugby and hurling went with hurling, and likewise 50-50 with soccer and hurling went hurling. So it was really success, really helped the popularity. As I said, it was always popular, but it really projected it.
What do you think it was about that team, other than being really successful, that inspired a whole bunch of new people to take up the sport?
Well, the thing about hurling, and I suppose, but the curtain crop of players is they're the guys next door. You meet them on the street, you meet them in the coffee shop. They'll talk to everyone. They're all very nice guys. They're down to earth guys. They're playing at a professional level, even though they're not professionals. But they're all amateurs, so they're day to day. You meet them walking around town. That's the great thing about them.
Have shirt sales been under pressure this week?
Well, they've been under pressure as far as we're flying through them. We're selling a load of them, but we're not under pressure because we're well stocked for it.
The one thing I'm keen to ask you about is at the moment in Gaelic games, it's kind of moving towards soccer, where there's a new jersey every year, every second year. How do you find that yourself, having to go through the new equipment every year? And I suppose these jerseys here may not be the Limerick jersey next year.
Just even going away from the jersey, from the leisure end of it, the leisure tends to change every 6 months or that, but it's such nice gear now. It's gone fashionable to be wearing it, so people don't mind changing, and they want the latest that's out. So it's a good thing. As I said, it's fashionable, so people are wearing them into the pubs, they're wearing them to work, even wearing them around the street, which is great.
What's your favourite era of Limerick jersey or Limerick fashion, if I had to put you on the spot?
Put me on the spot, I suppose the current, it's every year it's evolving, it's getting nicer and nicer, and O'Neill's, who are the supplier, they've improved their designs down through the years. So I think every year we're nicely surprised with the way it's coming out. This year's stuff is beautiful. I think it's really, really nice.
Good stuff. Will they win on Sunday?
Of course.
Yes, he's very confident. Steve Gleeson, co-owner of Gleeson Sports Scene in Limerick, where the hurley sales are booming. Owen, was there a buzz in the shop when you were there?
There was, yeah. The front of the shop is all GAA. It seems to really kind of stock well on all different sports, but it just struck me what a stupid question to ask somebody who's trying to sell current Limerick jerseys what his favourite Limerick jersey is, as if he's going to say anything other than the current Limerick jersey, which, to be fair, is quite nice. I think that some jerseys have been overcomplicated over the past couple of seasons, but Limerick's still simple, still nice, and I'd say they were flying through him. I'd say he maybe took a gamble on a big order to get him in early in the year, because I'd say the sales boom late in the season, and he just wouldn't get an order in on time for an All-Ireland final given the compressed season if he were to react to a semi-final win. So I'd say he took a bit of a gamble. I'd say a lot of sports shops took a bit of a gamble on their jerseys this year, but it seems to have paid off quite a bit for them.
And it's nice to see these smaller shops. I think, as you said at the start, that a lot of counties or a lot of towns have these little sports shops that are iconic in these places.
Yeah, they still seem to be going. I think that, that kind of is a question around a lot of different businesses at the moment, whether it's the coffee you drink or the sports shops you attend, trying to support local businesses. But the local sports shop is definitely going strong, certainly from my perspective. I know that there are a number of different chains, obviously, who are trying to invade the market as well and have done so successfully. But the local sports shop on All-Ireland Final Week, I'd say they're still doing great business if their county is there.
Yeah, I was driving through Limerick yesterday. I was on the way down to Kerry for the press day. Those interviews are going to be coming up in the next few days. But there was little tables and stalls out alongside on the road, so on the way to Kerry. So obviously in Limerick, all these young kids out selling there was some jerseys, there was bunting, there was headbands, all of that type of thing. But I thought it was pretty cool, just on the side of the road, just these stalls set up.
And how did Limerick compare to Kerry yesterday? Has Kerry, I haven't been down there in a couple of days. Has it got into All-Ireland mood yet?
It absolutely has, yes. Yeah, the flags are flying high. You're missing it after a few days, Owen.
The seat that you're in Adrian Barry's seat right now, and before the semi-final last year, he literally drove past my house and took a video and drove to my local village and said there's no flags up whatsoever. No. Which is a hell of a length to go to I guess just be a full-blown weirdo. So I'm glad to hear that it's not actually that case this year.
No, I definitely could feel that they're absolutely gunning for this All-Ireland. Like they have to win this. This feels like, now or never type of thing, And I asked the question a few times to Jack, and I was speaking to Tyke Morley, Shane Ryan as well. Do you feel that pressure? Is there anticipation that, you have to win? You have to win. Kerry does not settle for anything else but All-Ireland wins.
If they don't win, it'll be you telling them that they have to win, which will be the reason why they don't win. So we finally have our scapegoat if they bottle it next Sunday.
Are you already on edge? You can feel the nerves.
No, definitely not nervous whatsoever. It's only just an entirely existential crisis that arrives if they don't manage to win this All-Ireland.
We will see. We're going to chat a hell of a lot more about that next week. Well, brilliant stuff, Owen. Thanks for all of that.
Chat to you soon.
And you can check out all Owen's stuff on our YouTube channel. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. OTB AM is back Monday morning with live reaction to the All-Ireland Hurling Final, Ireland's deciding test with New Zealand, the Open and much more. Right now we're leaving you with part 2 of Owen's chat with the former Limerick hurling manager Tom Ryan. Have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.
Oh, there's huge interest. There's huge interest in the county team, and in particular on when a county team in Limerick, there's no cliche there. Limerick have great supporters. Like all counties, the support will come when you're successful. And in the team back in the 70s, that was a successful team, hard fought it as well in tough times. They had great support, huge support even for the homecomings and all that. They were very memorable. And come on, then in later years, then when the 90s, even though we weren't successful nationally, but we won the championships under our belt, and the support was magnificent as well. And I always kind of measure the support in Limerick by the city, and in Limerick County there is no problem with support in the county. It is just from Doon to Abbeyfield, it's hurling. I mean, there are tremendous hurling supporters and people who will travel and they love the game. North Kerry would be brought in as well. I mean, as huge supporters of the hurling, which is only proper odd because North Kerry would be very, very strong in the hurling and very well organised as well. I spent some time back there myself, and I really was fascinated with because youth. I mean, naturally we tribute Kerry with football, but I mean the hurling fraternity there are magnificent, and so like the hype is there. But when I have been, as you see, we're very adjacent to Limerick City here, and I have worked in Limerick City like in engineering for all my life, and I mean you get the feel of it there. And when you see the women in Limerick talking about the hurling, they call it the hurling is great. And being involved with it, having teams, leading teams and coaching teams, and the county team, especially in the 90s when I was hands-on, it was absolutely magnificent from the public.
Mm. Can we go back to the 1970s then, because it is quite timely to chat about it this week. 73, 74, obviously very different fortunes from your own perspective, but the same opponent in Kilkenny. You get one over them in 73 and then lose to them in 74. What do you remember from those days about how good that Kilkenny team was? Because obviously Brian Cody was a player in that team.
Well, he wasn't a player now in the 70s, I mean, he was in the 90s. Is it the 90s we're talking about, or the 70s?
The 70s.
70s, yeah. Now, Brian Cody, I mean, Kilkenny all the time on. Kilkenny, I mean, when you play Kilkenny, you play the All Blacks of hurling. That's what you play. And I mean, I always measured my own teams that I coached, and I've coached quite a lot of teams at every level, and from club to county, and I would always measure them by the standard that the All Blacks took, the demand on the players, the respect they had for the jersey, the actual identity that the jersey meant. Kilkenny, you can go no further than that, and that is what we'll be meeting next week. We met it in 73, we were successful in 73, and we were better, with a better team in 74, but Kilkenny beat us. So they're always, they have a huge tradition. Great, they go unannounced, but basically when you look at their infrastructure, it means there's very little football. There's practically none. All they did win a junior there recently. They have very little soccer or rugby. All of them produce good players in all grades and all courts, but hurling is their religion there, and from when they're born to the grave, it's hurling, and that is a culture. It's an identity. And you can't overcome that when it comes down to performance and quality. And they've also had very, very, what you'll call outstanding coaches that know the game, and down to this day, and sure, can we say anything about the present man? Legend. So I mean, they have had those at every level, and I always found them, even when back then. When we've met, on a few occasions, and they're very generous with their response to Limerick and to what we did and what we're trying to do all the time. They're people that love hurling. They're low profile, but there's huge quality. And even recently, meeting Eddie Kerr, I mean, one of the greatest, I suppose, that ever talked out, and having him, talk to him and his wife, and the feel that he had for the Limerick team, for what we're doing, and in particular for myself, for my articles on the Daily Mail. And, it goes to show that they're very genuine people.
Mm. Did that then in 73 make it all the better that it was Kilkenny that you beat? Winning in All-Ireland was obviously special, but the fact that you got it over the All Blacks of hurling in 73, did that just put the cherry on the cake?
No, actually, to win it, really, to win All-Ireland, you're going to meet the top class team in the country anyway. Mm. And to win it, you have to beat them. So, it really wouldn't matter to me whether it's Kilkenny, Cork, Tipperary, or Dublin, or Waterford, any team that, because when you reach that stage, it's more than likely coming out of Leinster, which was very competitive at the time, ultra competitive between themselves in Wexford and Dublin before Galway were introduced into it. You're always meeting the best. But I never looked at it as beating Kilkenny, putting any extra leverage onto winning an All-Ireland medal.
Right. Can we talk then about those differences between 73 and 74? It's interesting that you say that your team in 74 was better. So was it a better Kilkenny team that you came up against as well?
It was, and it was Kilkenny were a bit depleted. We had serious injury problems in 73, and we got the advantage of that for the 80-minute match as well, which is pretty unusual. And it was played in bad conditions. But you won't keep Kilkenny out of the action or out of the top realm for too long, and they came back with a stronger team in 74. We had a stronger team in 74, and they got the best of us in 70. Even the matches I saw now, even I suppose one of the best matches in the whole era in 74 and 73, 74 era was played in Wembley. In the Easter annual Easter game they played between the All-Ireland champions that played in London, and that was a magnificent match. We went extra time, and it was one of the best matches that I have ever participated in. So it showed the rivalry that was there, and it showed the intensity was there, and those were legends of the game on that Kilkenny era. But then again, another realm came after that, and now we have another, who's to say that we're not reaching another era of them again,
Absolutely. Who was the best player of that Kilkenny generation that you came up against?
Oh, the best player, I suppose, Chunky O'Brien, Pat Delaney, Eddie Kerr, they were, Kieran Purcell was a legend, Kieran Purcell, they were tremendous competitors, and Ollie Walsh, of course, was, they had, you could name them, all of them. They were absolutely every one of them, they're a huge, a wonderful tradition, That's not to say that tradition that in Tipperary it is. It's in Cork, it's in Waterford, Limerick and Clare, and in Galway, but they were able to manage it. And they hit a vein of very, very good coaches. Father Tommy Walsh, he's a legend in his own lifetime, the players he has produced, you see. And that's what the link was. And they were able to do their work, able to do their business quietly and very, very humbly, but they could be, and even the players themselves are very, very, they were always very, very humble. But when they pulled that Kilkenny, the black and amber over their head, that meant an order to them. That was their ultimate, and they performed accordingly.
It's interesting that we kind of talk up how great those Kilkenny teams were and the various periods of dominance that they've had in the game, and Tipperary and Cork often get thrown into that same category. When you think about your own management career with Limerick, that stuff had kind of subsided. It was the golden era of hurling where everybody could win in All-Ireland. Yourselves and Wexford and Offaly and Clare were coming to the fore and trying to contend. It was a brilliant period, I'd imagine, when you look back on the 90s, even though you didn't manage to get over the line, just the variation that you had in the winners' enclosure.
Absolutely. It was an unbelievable period of time. And played with, from my perspective, and with a very, very small backroom team, very humble support as regards financial support, and to be able to come out of an era of really, poor displays and indiscipline in the Limerick situation, to come back there in the 90s and to forge our way up to 2 All-Ireland finals, winning 2 Munster finals, 2 Munster championships, participating in 3 and winning 2, and coming up against very, very good teams in Cork, like Tipperary. Then you had the emergence of Clare and Waterford, and even that was a very, very, it was a brilliant time in hurling. And, we tend to forget about it here because an awful lot of things, you see, happened, not happened, but what really, I kind of have regrets about is, you see, at that particular time, there was no backroom team, there was no back door. Yeah. Every match was a final. And, and unfortunately, we failed, and in 2 finals, it wasn't the end of the world. We came back again. We resurrected our team, we came back, we changed, and we were working from a small pool of players, and in a very hostile environment from the county board. That was unbelievable altogether. Nobody would actually even believe the hostility and the hassle that I, as a manager, got from the people that I was promoting and from the people that I was working for, because I never got a penny and I didn't want a penny. And unfortunately, to be able to achieve what we did with the internal political wranglings and the hassle that I was put under at that particular time, and sacked really after winning the National League, after playing one of the best Galway teams that we see in the area, who were unbeaten in Ennis. And that was shocking treatment of myself and my team that I had with me, which were very small, including Dave Mahidi, and who was a wonderful individual, and had actually played a huge part in having the team in the condition they were in with very little resources.
Is that something that you still think about, just about the acrimonious circumstances in which it all ended?
Forever. What happened there, and that I'm a tough cookie now. I'm not, I'm a political animal, and I'm well able to, and I always was. And it wasn't the way it ended at all, it was the way it started. And in actual fact, the the hassle and the pressure that I was put under by the county board was unbelievable. Nobody would have stayed in the position. I had a very small team to keep with for the keep on side. We had only about, I just 2 selectors with me who had been elected, like I was elected by the club with Limerick, and and it continued from day one. Even before the very first time I was put under pressure was they told me that there was 70,000 in the red. And there was no decision to be made, imagine. So, needless to say, I wouldn't be too put off by that, But that was the actual ground. That's the success we had, and it was wonderful success because every time we went here, we were under pressure. And every match we played in the championship of the final, we had a wonderful discipline. We had no man ever sent off in the final. We had an average free count against us as 7 or 8. A wonderful record of sport and of discipline and of image. And I always wanted to create an image of the Limerick team that would reflect Limerick, and we did that. And to do that, under hostility and pressure was a major achievement in itself. But would be my way. I wouldn't be put off by people, by negative people at all. But it was a pity. It will always, and one aspect of it was that when they submitted the 20 questions, to me now, they were silly. But for my team, that I had a small team, in particular Dave, who was not alone, had been a wonderful associate of mine through the club and the whole lot. And the effects it had on him and his family, and the pressure that was put under. It was absolutely outrageous,
Do you think that hostility would have existed had you got one All-Ireland?
Oh, well, you see, it started before we poked the ball. Right. So no. It would, and the reason for it, no one knows. The reason for it, I believe, was that what happened was that you see, I was an elected individual. I was never selected, and the first by the club of the Limerick, things had gone to such a state of disarray and poor performances and that the clubs themselves put the county board under pressure, and they selected the management team, a management team over, so we had to start afresh.
So they didn't have the power, basically, the county board?
Well, they hadn't the power. They weren't able to dictate who would be on the team and what we do. So that what they did in was they started the Dirty Tricks campaign, and it was unjust believable. Nobody would even contemplate that of a minute part of him. From day one to the end, they sacked me in this. I knew that anyway when we won the National League. When that day they would have collected, I suppose, a cheque of £90,000, being league champions, a major prize for the league that time. And they didn't even, the county board didn't even come to the dinner after the match, after winning the national title. So they left an awful, that left a very bad, not to me, but to my people, the people that I had around me, that I looked for the support and got as, had the people that, we were financially constrained in every aspect of the world. One example of it all would be, and it's unbelievable to think of it, we were going to, our campaign in '96 was unbelievable. We had, our first game was in Cork, and they hadn't been beaten there for 75 years, Cork, in the championship home, or 80 years. I think they were never beaten down in the championship in Cork, and at home. And that was our first challenge in '96. And I couldn't get £120 expenses for the captain that they wouldn't pay him, and I nearly had to call a strike myself in order to get it. After 3 weeks before the game, I had to threaten, if he doesn't get his £120 expenses, we're not going to Cork. And I had a meeting, an emergency meeting with myself and the county chairman. It was unbelievable, the natural blackguardism that they put me under, and it was personally aimed at me, because in that they were affecting the team. But in even the Dirty Tricks campaign went down to the 20 questions, they went down to the actual, to get at the players themselves. I mean, it was unjust believable. And people would forget it. I never forget that. You couldn't forget it.
We should talk about the game on Sunday. It's relatively important. It's really interesting stuff, though, Tom. It's great to kind of hear your views and all of that. But this Sunday, first of all, just kind of the presence of Kilkenny and Brian Cody. Does it worry you as a Limerick man? First of all,
no. I'm in the happy position next Sunday that I know we're going to have a fantastic game of hurling. I mean, we have a wonderful team in Limerick. There's no doubt, but at the best, I suppose, ever wore a Limerick set of Limerick jerseys. This bunch of players came up to the ranks. I mean, together, they're handled and they're managed very well, you know. And I believe that you know, whereas they have the success behind them, they have the titles. Now we go for 3 in a row, which is a big call in Limerick. Like we always associate that with Cork, Tipperary, Kilkenny, Limerick. So they were, if they could get a smell of one, would always be. Now we're talking about 3 in a row. There's huge confidence in the team, but the team, of course, again is facing the old arch enemies. You know, I mean, the experts at this job. I mean, Kilkenny again coming again with a new team built, practically new team again. I was very impressed with them against Clare, with their enthusiasm. You know, like what I like about them is about Kilkenny is on that if it's for no matter what they compete in, they compete. Let it be the league. You never hear them talking about the championship. You don't hear them. They take the competition with great respect. And, you know, that is a very good sign of him. Cody is a master at, you know, again, he's the boss in his own dynasty. He has his experience. He has, first of all, he's a great backroom team and a great base to set up Kilkenny's hurling everywhere. And all the clubs, they of any young fella that starts hurling, Kilkenny needs to wear the black and amber. At some stage, let it be minor, in under 21, a senior, and you'll always get value. You'll always that comes as I said. I compare them to the All Blacks. They're hungry, they're physical, they're disciplined, and they play the game the way it is coached. They'll train the way it is coached. They'll you know, we know the actual how they train and what they're doing. There's very little psychology. The psychology with Kilkenny is Brian Cody, and he is that side. He said, and he'll relay that. He won't need anyone coming down getting 150,000 a year to tell him what to do. Like, and so the thing about it is that he has the hurling. He has, and they'll go to the wire. Limerick are different. Limerick they're physical, they're superb athletes. They're genuine great ambassadors for the game as well. Great ambassadors for Limerick. You know, I mean, we had a bit of, you know, they were getting kind of a bit of stick there early on now in the actual, in the league and that, and there were a few indisciplines and there were a few red cards and things over minor things, you like. Well, when you compare it to hurling, when I hurled and when the teams I had, they were very minor and very, very small, and you wouldn't be getting any red cards. But in the same time, you don't need them. And now the media have latched onto them big time, and Limerick came under a bit of pressure. But the advantage they have on is they have an advantage to switch. And I'll give you one example of them now, looking at them closely, and I'm a great admirer of them. I know them personally, all of them. They're a very humble bunch, and they have this ability to change. Now, this comes from the management now as well. This doesn't come from the players themselves. It comes from the planning that they have. And we were a team like this that always, you know, our strong point was possession and control and delivery. Now, an awful lot of that came, you see, they invented the swarm tackle in Limerick, which I was totally against, but it worked. We won 2 All-Irelands. So who's to say that it isn't right when it works? You see, this is where you can be shut down.
What's wrong with the swarm tackle?
Swarm tackle is, to me, is illegal, and should have been. Now they're very worried about it, like.
Yeah.
But 3 years ago, I didn't even see it. I wrote about it 3 years ago. I said the swarm tackle is Limerick will swarm you. They're big men, they're big hands, their elbows are out, they hang up, and there's high tackling that's going on, and they'll swarm you and they'll squeeze you inside, like the way you say with a jellyfish. But then that came out of fashion. It began to get noticed. People started writing about it. Not people, myself in particular. I give myself credit for that. And so then. No swarm tackle now. Then they throw a ball. Last game was the final. Limerick had about 2 hand passes. One of them I think was wrong. So, and even one day I noticed, them Burns who I have huge time for, tremendous, unbelievable player, like, and funny as well, and great character. And he got a ball. And so with the throw ball now, because I always maintained that 90% of the passes were throw balls anyway. 90. Yeah. But then again he thought. So he wasn't sure if he wanted to throw it or hand pass it. Yeah. Eventually he lost it. So you see, the thinking is there. They can move. Kineric can get him to think of it in another vein.
Yeah.
And they have the ability and they have the consistency on to do that. They are absolute masters at changing from one system, one way of playing to another, without, because when they came under pressure, which they did, the actual, they were able to think, at least they saw themselves. And that's why I give credit to Kiley and to Kineric. They can read it, like. And they said, look, this isn't working out. We're being cut out here, so we'll cut that out, and the team will respond.
Yeah.
Okay. And you see, and the one huge advantage that Limerick have had in the last 3 years or 4 years now is they have been admired too much by the opposition. They've got too much credit.
They're beaten before they go out almost.
Thank you. Cork went up to the Ireland last year, and going on to that coach in Cork, they were beaten.
Yeah.
They didn't lift their head above Crow Park, and they might have left it at home. Now, they had the psychological intimidation that Limerick have been able to apply, which is great credit due to what they're doing. The amount of time that they can get on the ball by teams playing, I have to laugh, because when I see Galway playing a sweeper in Limerick with 5 forwards, when you run actually 7 or 8 forwards again, because the Limerick backs are a very formidable unit, and they don't actually give away much, and they're very cool under pressure, but they don't come under pressure that often. It's simply that. They have intimidated, and I mean, in the best of a way, like. I don't mean by being physical, but because they are physical, like. I mean, at the same time, they have that. Is a huge attribute. Confidence that they have is unreal. Look at Hegarty, the confidence in him, the skill factor he can do. Hayes, when he gets the ball, all he wants to do is hop it off the ground and take on the British Army from front of him. Nothing to stop him. Gillan is an artist. He's the most supreme. But you see, the one advantage they have is they're getting the ball to suit him. Mm-hmm. The Limerick backs are doing their job. Yeah. The Limerick backs are playing the ball to him. Where are the forwards? They're looking at him. You see, so this is... but next time they'll be doing that.
Yeah.
These boys will take them on from the word go. So Limerick will be the greatest test of Limerick since I started.
Yeah, for sure. Can I ask you then, Tom, who is going to win on Sunday, if you had to give us a prediction?
I believe now, and I'm not avoiding the question at all, Owen, it will be a very, very tight contest. There'll be very little in it. And Limerick have the confidence to eke out a win under pressure. I think Limerick by the narrowest of margins.
Tom, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. Thanks a million for welcoming me into your home this morning. I'll let you get back to the farm work. The dogs are going mental out there, but we'll chat to you again soon, Tom, and enjoy Sunday.
Owen, it was great to have you, and thank you very much, and the best of luck, at the programme.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating